Okay, so good afternoon. A lot happening in the sports world right now. A lot happening, and it's very, very interesting. Some of the things that are going on. So we're going to be focusing to start with on Manchester City and their 115 charges. The fact that Manchester United have posted 3 consecutive years of losses, which is the same as what happened with Nottingham Forest and Everton, and UEFA's threat to ban England from competing at the 2028 Euros, which England is co-hosting, and potentially English clubs from European competitions. So it all coming a bit coincidental, all this happening at roughly the same time. There are obviously other things to discuss. Before we actually get into that, obviously super chats are now available. So if you want to drop a donation or a super chat, that would be most appreciated. Now, back to what's going on with football. So the last couple of days, news story been circulating that UEFA are considering or threatening to ban England from Euro 2028, which could also impact Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. And for the simple fact of the government legislation that's going to go through Parliament in regards to the independent regulator. What is also interesting is the Premier League are opening their hearing into Man City's 115 financial charges, and Man United are hemorrhaging money. Now, Man City and Man United are two of those clubs that don't want the independent regulator. The Premier League is a bit torn over this, but the Premier League stance is we don't want the regulator either. But the Football League is also pretty divided, with the majority of clubs wanting the regulator. So English football and football governance is a bit of a mess, as is European football governance, to be fair. So that's all going on in the backdrop. And it's all coming together at the same time, and suddenly UEFA make this announcement. The irony is I don't think UEFA do block England from playing at Euro 2028. I also don't think they're going to ban English clubs from competing in European club competitions because of the amount of money the English clubs make for UEFA with the Champions League, Europa League, and Europa Conference League, because they dominate the viewership figures over in the US, and the US is a very, very key market, as is the Asian market as well, where the English clubs have very, very big fan bases and followings. So the TV deal is worth a lot of money. The viewership figures, advertising, etc., is worth a lot of money. And if English clubs were prohibited from competing in those competitions, it would actually hurt UEFA's revenues. Even though they're a not-for-profit organisation, it would still hurt their revenue streams significantly. It's a fact. It would. Also, if England aren't participating in international tournaments, guess what? Viewership figures overseas are less as well. So the TV audience, again, that advertising revenue would be down. It's a fact. It is generally a fact. The figures speak for themselves. It's the same when Italy failed to qualify for tournaments as well, when they're not there. Certain nations need to basically qualify quite regularly for tournaments, because otherwise it does actually impact the viewership figures globally. So it's true. It is true. So UEFA, it's complicated, but it boils down to who's regulating who, and where the money's coming from, and the amount of control regulators have. It's basically it. I think it's designed to by the clubs in England, those clubs that are anti-regulation, which is basically the Big Six and a handful of other Premier League clubs, to put pressure on the British government via UEFA, which is their trade body, basically. That's simple fact. We see this with any form of legislation. Companies or individuals will go via a trade body or by lobbyists to put pressure on government or political parties to change policy or water down policy or regulation. That's basically what is happening here. It happens in every other major industry, from the banks, the automotive industry, agriculture, heavy industry. It's pressure groups, basically. It's basically what it is. In regards to the Man City charges and the hearing, the next couple of months are going to be very, very interesting. And they're guilty. Let's not kid ourselves here. But it's what the punishment is, and if it's a weak punishment, it makes the Premier League governance look weak. It makes the FA look weak. UEFA have had their run-ins with Man City and found them guilty a couple of times on a variety of charges. The second time which they got off, technicality. It's a time limitation technicality, which the Premier League and the FA don't have. So it's just about the punishment and what they receive. Now, there'll be those fans of Everton and Nottingham Forest, to a certain extent Leicester City, who'll go, well, we've had to go through various fines and points deductions and investigations, and we were dealt with in one way. This has been dragged out by Man City because they have all the money to hire lawyers. Because Everton have no money to spend. They're all tied up in their new stadium. Nottingham Forest overspent to stay in the Premier League. And Leicester City, again, overspent on contracts and had a disastrous season and got relegated, even though they have won silverware as a Premier League club throughout their history, ironically, since the Premier League's been about. And, their ownership wanted to cut spending, but were hemorrhaging money on player contracts. It's just a thing. And it does make a mockery of the new UEFA spending rules that domestic leagues have to implement, considering that Manchester United obviously now have these 3 consecutive years of losses. So, yeah, Manchester United want to get a new stadium built potentially with taxpayers' money rather than just fix Old Trafford. It beggars belief that some of these big clubs that have massive debts and are making massive losses somehow find the money for new stadiums or stadium upgrades. It's just weird. So football governance and football finances, again, a talking point this week. And it's just the timing of certain announcements by Manchester United and Man City having their hearing. Suddenly UEFA come out and go, oh, we don't want this regulator. Because it seems to be a threat to their authority rather than actually political involvement. Because what is interesting is that every time a bid is done to host a tournament, there's government backing. When that host country or countries are given a tournament, there's government finances involved. There's infrastructure projects involved. There is government funding. It doesn't matter what the sport is, what the tournament is, what the event is. So UEFA's argument that they don't want government interference is weak at best. And the independent name in the regulator is kind of a thing. So we'll see what happens. But I just don't. I just cannot see, with the current financial ecosystem and the current footballing economy as an industry, that they could afford to have England or any of the home nations and clubs blocked from competition. It just doesn't make economic sense. It actually harms them more. So there is that. The NRL, obviously, we've had the opening weekend of the NRL finals. Newcastle and Canterbury are now going to have a Mad Monday. Of course, the Josh Addo-Carr situation. Now, I didn't do a video on the Josh Addo-Carr situation because there was a lot of bad reporting and speculation surrounding it. But both his tests have come back positive. That the police did. I know you will get false positives and false negatives when it comes to any roadside sobriety test, or even if you're having tests done for various illnesses, you will get those false positives and false negatives. But the fact that the secondary test came back positive, highly unlikely that both would be false positives or false negatives. And it's going to be interesting what the Canterbury Bulldogs do and what the NRL do in regards to punishment and suspensions and fines. Considering that he wasn't caught by in-competition testers, he was caught by the police. Now, he did self-report himself, so there's things going on here that I don't think we'll get the full story out in time. We may never get the full story, but it's been a tough few weeks for the NRL with player discipline, especially with the Latrell Mitchell situation and how South Sydney dealt with that and how the NRL dealt with that. And this is not the first time that Josh Addo-Carr's had an off-field indiscretion either. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see what the NRL do and how they deal with the situation. It's just going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. It is. It does raise questions about the sports culture and how prevalent recreational drug use is within the playing group. and within the sport. And this is not a new issue, and we've discussed this before at length on the channel. So that's something to keep an eye on. It's troubling. It is, and considering their standing in the game in regards to their marketable assets, they're some of the biggest stars in the game. Mitchell and Adokar, they are the NRL's poster boys, and they're because of their Aboriginal backgrounds as well, and with the issues that community in Australia faces, it's not a good look. It is not a good look, and while Adokar hasn't had the on-field suspensions for foul play like Latrell Mitchell, he has had his off-field issues as well, and it's not a good look, and it does raise questions about the culture within the NRL and within the NRL playing group, and it'll be interesting to see what the Rugby League Players Association have to say as well, because of his standing in the game, his high-profile nature as a high-profile player. It'll be interesting what the RLPA do in regards to welfare support and a statement and working with the NRL to basically clean up the game. This is not an isolated incident, and I wouldn't be surprised if more players in the off season also get into hot water. We see it every off season. It's not on the same level of 2017, 2018, which was a very, very damaging off season for the league with the optics, and there was also some incidents in the Super League as well. In fact, that entire 18-month period, it was just ill discipline off the field with players, either on international duty or with their clubs, or while they were injured. It was just rugby league just had a string of headlines, almost on the daily, with players getting into trouble with the police, with the testers, with their clubs, other incidents as well. Very damaging period for the game, which led to the no fault, no stand down policy, which is a flawed policy. We can all agree on that, which has obviously cropped up since 2018 when it was introduced, and has become is still a talking point now. And I think it does. And when Todd Greenberg gets pushed out and Andrew Abdo gets put in as first as interim and now as head of the NRL below Peter V'landys, they decided to keep that policy. So it was a Todd Greenberg policy back in 2018. Andrew Abdo has kept the policy going, and I think that was one of the issues with the NRL and why Todd Greenberg no longer has a job at the NRL was the culture within the league and the culture within the playing group and all the negative, scandalous headlines. And it's the same with the AFL, with their illicit drugs policy and their now two-strike policy that obviously made the headlines earlier this year. And I've got to read up on what their review was and how they're restructuring it. But again, that was a reactionary policy brought in because of player misbehaviour and allegations about players and club executives getting up to no good. And of course, the Ben Cousins situation is why that policy exists. Both leagues were hit by the peptide scandal, and I covered the peptide scandal on at great length over the years on the channel. And so it does raise questions about sporting culture in Australia. But the recreational drug use is a much wider global sports problem. And I've made reference of the fact we can discuss the legalities of recreational drug use and whether we should decriminalise or legalise or regulate, and regulate much like we do with alcohol and tobacco and other energy drinks and other addictive substances that are legal, which if they were discovered today would be classified as Class A or Class B in this country, or Schedule 1 or Cat 1, or whatever each individual government categorises recreational narcotics. And that is a social and political debate that obviously sport's involved with. But no, it's an ongoing issue within professional sport. We've seen athletes going to the Olympics fail because they had metabolites, should I say, of cannabis or speed in their system or whatever recreational. And the irony is that those athletes suffer from ADHD, and obviously they have to declare their medications and various things, but it is an ongoing concern. So we'll keep an eye on the situation with the Bulldogs and Josh Adokar. I don't think this is the end we're going to hear of it, and I think He is going to get a punishment from both the club and the NRL. It'll be interesting to see if he actually stays at the Bulldogs long term or if he's on the way out, because I think the culture that Seraldo's brought in is a good culture, and it's played out on the field with them making the top 8 this year and a massive turnaround in their fortunes, and you can see the effort the players are putting in. Okay, they came up short earlier today against the Sea Eagles, but you can clearly see that the recruitment of the right characters and the right culture, I think, is being borne out with how Seraldo and Gus Gould have recruited and brought players and non-playing staff in and changed the off-field structures of the club and the culture within the Bulldogs organisation. And that also comes from the board. There was a change in the board as well, and the culture within the club has drastically changed from where it was a few years ago. Obviously, the West Tigers have had their third wooden spoon in a row, and that's discussion worthy in itself. And I will be doing a video on the 3 wooden spoons that the West Tigers have had. I think this season they were better than the previous 2 seasons. I think they have bottomed out. I think they're on the upward trajectory. It's going to be a long fix. I don't think it's going to be as simple as people think. I think it's a long-term fix, but then you have to again look at boardroom culture and the divided boardroom that they have, because there's reports that the Balmain side of the club won out of the merger, and the irony is the Magpies section owns a fair proportion of the Balmain section now, so there's issues at board level, and there's obviously issues with playing facilities at Campbelltown, at Leichhardt, and needing upgrades, although Campbelltown's a pretty decent stadium. Leichhardt is not great. And Campbelltown is in a terrible location for fans to get to. It's in the arse end of Sydney, right out in the western suburbs, basically almost outside of Sydney. So getting to and from the stadium and getting fans there can be an issue. But it's got to be a long-term fix, and they've got to give Marshall time to turn things around. They had 12 debutants this season, and a lot of those, I think 9 of them were teenagers. So. That tells you what you need to know about the age of the squad. The average age of the squad is quite young, very inexperienced, very raw, talented, but really raw, inexperienced squad. But then you've got to look at their player retention, their youth system, and they develop players and then they ship them on to other clubs that are more successful or more doing better. So their recruitment needs looking at, and their player retention needs looking at, because they have the player base, they have the youth system base to do quite well, but they're not succeeding on the field, and it's been a long time since they made the top. I think it's been 13, is it nearly 14 years since they made the top 8? It's been a long time since they played in September, basically, games that mattered. So and into potentially October, depending on when the grand final is played. It has been a long time. Long time, which is a massive concern. At least every other club, apart from the Dolphins, who've only been in for 2 years, has made the top 8 in that time frame and had some pretty decent runs in that time frame. So this is a problem, is that lack of finals, and the fans keep turning up. So the fan base is frustrated. They're constantly making the headlines because they're a basket case of an organisation. There's instability at boardroom level, and their player retention and player recruitment is not great. And they've gone through a lot of head coaches. They've got a couple of bad contracts, although with the youth of the squad, I think those contracts are going to be club friendly going forward. And I can see a transition with the club getting younger and more youthful, and hopefully promoting as much local talent as possible, and becoming less reliant on the big name player who's had success at another club coming in, paying overs for them in a salary cap league. That's difficult to justify when they're not playing well. So we'll do some videos on the West Tigers. I've got to do the wooden spoon season series, because they were really fun to do, looking at all the terrible seasons in the NRL era of all the wooden spooners. I started with the Western Suburb Magpies several years ago, and that video has proven to be exceptionally popular. The back-to-back seasons where they were garbage. and they were a basket case, and they were bad. I don't think any. I think the Newcastle Knights could rival when they were having their 3 consecutive wooden spoons. Could rival the Magpies for being absolutely atrocious. But I think the West Tigers aren't far off. But they were only 2 points away from not getting the wooden spoon. I mean, it was just some heavy defeats. They lost some close games. It was some of those heavy defeats. That for and against was shocking. But I'm also surprised with how bad Parramatta were this season and South Sydney. South Sydney fell apart rapidly, and questions need to be asked of that organisation as well, and the direction they're heading in. Yeah, a fair few players are leaving the club at the end of this season. There's going to be a lot of fresh faces in there, a lot of player turnover. Wayne Bennett's coming back in. Is Bennett going to be able to fix the problems? I'm not sure Wayne Bennett is the solution long term. Maybe as a stopgap, and maybe the players' performances are better next season. But the fact that 9 players from the first grade squad are saying either retiring or leaving the club tells you that there are problems there. It is a divided dressing room. They've had a lot of injuries as well, which hasn't helped. But their rapid decline over the last 2 years. Same with Parramatta. It's quite striking that they make a grand final and then, much like Brisbane, don't make the finals the following year. Brisbane, same. I'm concerned about the Broncos as well, and Kevin Walters being head coach by this time next season. There are some reports that he might get maybe 5-6 weeks into the start of next season to try and save his job. And the Broncos had some really shocking games to round out this season. Some really bad defeats in there. They really took a beating from other clubs around them when they were in the battle to try and turn their season around, make the top 8. And their season's been a bit all over the place, quite honestly. So there's that. What else? It's an interesting one. Sport at the moment with where we're at. I'm looking forward to the 6 hours of Indianapolis, the IMSA series next weekend. I thought it was this weekend. I got my weekends all mixed up. Looking forward to that. It's going to be a fun race on the Saturday next weekend in 6 days' time. Going to be a fun race to watch. So that's my Saturday evening sorted. So I'm really looking forward to that. I love my endurance racing. I really, really do. What annoys me, though, is there isn't standard regulations between the World Endurance Series, the various Le Mans series like Asian and European Le Mans series, and the IMSA series. They have different regulations for the cars, which is a bit frustrating when they're racing the same class of vehicle with different regs. That's a bit annoying. It would be nice to have just the FIA guy. Look, here's all the regs that here's the standard regulations across all the series, and just standardise it all. But it is what it is. Obviously, IMSA have their regs that are different to the World Endurance Championship, and then the Le Mans series, which is the level below, have their regs as well, which is slightly tweaked. I mean, if they got the LMP2s to go full chat, I mean, those cars are just as fast as the current hypercars, if not faster. Just imagine if those Gibson V8s were just fully tuned up to the full horsepower. That would be ridiculous. They go at a fair speed. So does the LMP3 category as well. They go at they're quick, and if they were fully turn the wick fully up, I mean, they are ridiculous. They are just stupidly fast. They're only, I think the LMP2s in IMSA are only going at about 80-85%, horsepower. They've turned the engines down. I would love to see them go fully flat out with the full engine range and the full horsepower package, because that'd be fun. They are ridiculously fast cars. They're beautiful cars as well, but they are ridiculously fast. I would also like to see the hypercars, be like Group C was back in the day, just full. Because what we have now with the regulations is you've got to have tyre management and fuel management, and you've got to manage the hybrid system and the energy. Just let them race full chat. Just let them go for their stints. Just let them go full throttle and just race each other. Because they got balance of performance, the cars are equally balanced. There are regulations in place that balance all the cars out. And so, while one may have slightly more horsepower, the other one might have slightly more downforce. It's like touring cars. you have this balance of performance. Let the cars just go. Turn the engines up full width. Just let them go right. Just nail it. And that's the one frustrating thing I have with motorsport is you're basically in every category now. It's tyre management. The tyres don't last a full stint or a full race depending on the category. You've got to manage fuel loads, and it's just let them go. There's too much winning done in the pit lane rather than on the track. I want to see wheel to wheel. I want to see just foot down, nailing it, literally just driving the vehicle like you stole it. Quite honestly, that's what I want to see. But yeah, we're seeing too many races won by technicalities and in the pit lane, which I find frustrating. I just love watching full throttle motorsport where they're just going hammer and tongs for however long the race lasts. So in endurance racing, that could be anywhere between what I think the shortest IMSA race is an hour. Is it an hour and 50 or an hour and 40? And the longest is obviously the 24 at Daytona. The average length is about 2 hours 40 minutes. The mid-range ones are about 6 hours, and then the others are 10 and 12 hours behind the 24 hours of Daytona. I just want to see the drivers go full chat every stint and just go for it. I love my endurance racing though, because there is obviously that element of the car is not going to come back looking pristine, factory fresh. There are going to be body panels that have been replaced, held together with gaffer tape and cable ties, and some of the cars will be nursing gremlins. Oh yes, some of these cars will be nursing a misfire. They're down on power. One of the spark plugs has failed. That they might have a slight oil leak. The gearbox is not sticking in third. You're skipping. The fact that it's a challenge of both men and machine, or women in this case as well, because there's a fair few really decent female racers out there that I think, because they haven't cracked F1, there's this misnomer that female drivers are crap. They're really not. Some of them just as good, not better than the men, and some records have been broken in recent years by female drivers, and some of them are bloody quick and can pedal quickly, which is fun. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the 6 hours of Indy on the road course. My favourite one is Petit Le Mans at Road Atlanta. It's a 10-hour race. That is ridiculous. It is ridiculous. That is a ridiculous circuit to have up to, I think, what year was it? They had like nearly 60 cars going around the circuit, which is ridiculous. There was like no space on the track. And they start in the afternoon and finish when it gets dark. And when it rains there, it's chaos. And it's in that part of the US in Atlanta, Georgia, where when the weather comes, because it's in hurricane season, when the weather comes and there's a thunderstorm or heavy rain, it is an interesting circuit. But it's great fun to watch. And, it's one of my favorite, if not my favorite endurance race. It's the end of it's Petit Le Mans. It's just 10 hours, and it feels like a sprint race at the same time. It is a lengthy endurance race. But it feels like a sprint race because it is that much shorter than the 24-hour, 12-hour races. And so there are some interesting overtakes and a bit of carnage. A couple of years ago, or was it last year, was absolute mayhem. So many yellow flags and safety cars, some real big shunts, some massive mechanicals, and some of the driving standards were a bit make the Italians look safe and sensible driving. So that's something to look forward to. Now, I did a members video, I think it was yesterday, when I was discussing what I do outside of the channel. And at the moment, I'm currently going through a series of books about World War II, and I'm currently reading the one about Market Garden, the Battle for Arnhem, and then the Dutch campaign in World War II. I've got about nearly halfway through, and of course, next week it is 80 years to the day that we landed in Holland, the Allies, on the 17th, which is Wednesday. And so it's very, very apt that I'm reading it right now. A bit of coincidence. I also went through some of the other books that I've bought, some that I've read, some that I'm going to read. And it's very, very interesting in that regard, looking at some of these books. I do love my reading in my spare time. It's a good way to relax. I think we don't do enough of that. I think a lot of kids today don't do enough of that. And they're too... I know the irony is I'm on a live stream on the tech, but A lot of kids today don't pick up a book and read. It doesn't matter what the book is. It could be a novel. It could be something like this, a non-fiction book about something in history. Kids don't read enough. They're too glued to their devices, and it's not just that, they just don't have healthy hobbies anymore. When I was a kid and a teenager growing up, if I wasn't on the old PlayStation and later on the Xbox, but when I wasn't on the PlayStation, I was playing five-a-side football down the local Astro in a five-a-side league. I was going out on my BMX and my mountain bike down the woods and going on the jumps. I was always, if I wasn't in the evenings on the games console, I would actually be out and about playing football, playing frisbee, going out on the mountain bike, going out on the BMX, and just going out and having fun outdoors. Yes, I would come home with some scrapes and bruises, covered in mud, but I would have definitely enjoyed myself in that regard. I really enjoyed just I did enjoy that aspect. We don't do enough of that now. We really don't do enough of that now. And yeah, I will admit a lot of the playing fields and recreational areas that we had don't exist anymore. A couple of my local youth clubs that I used to go to are gone, and we do have a problem with a health crisis and obesity crisis in this country. And the loss of sports facilities is a problem, and that's an issue that local and regional governments need to address, and private businesses need to address. There is no easy solution, but it is a massive problem that over the last 30, 40 years or so, even longer than that possibly, that we've sold off a lot of youth facilities and sporting facilities. Massive problem. And people go, we've got to ban the adverts before 9 p.m. Kids don't watch TV. Oh, we've got to ban junk food adverts on TV before 9 p.m. Kids don't watch TV. They're on the internet, they're on their devices. They do not watch TV at all. Well, some do, but it's not a thing. I mean, I'm in my 30s. I don't watch TV unless it's sport related. I don't watch TV either. So while I understand why government want to do it, it's not going to have the impact that they think. The viewing habits of people have changed massively, and we need investment in youth facilities and recreational parks and playing fields and grassroots funding for sports clubs. That's what we need. That's why we have an obesity crisis. People aren't active. It's got nothing to do with TV adverts. The facilities and the investment and the infrastructure needs to be in place. So when we were talking about the Olympic legacy of the Olympics in 2012 and what the potential Euros legacy will be in 2028, should England not be barred from competing, that's what the legacy should be about, is people being healthier, investment in sporting facilities and recreational facilities and open green spaces in urban areas. We don't have enough of them. So that's my political rant. That's my little soapbox rant. It's just something I've noticed over the years is we have less high quality grassroots urban sports facilities and recreational facilities that are affordable and accessible. And that's one of the reasons why we have a massive health crisis with our young people, with diabetes and obesity and other health related issues by not being active. And junk food doesn't help. But I actually think the quality of fast food is actually massively improved from what it was when I was a kid. Oh, yes, regulations a lot better there. But that's an issue. It's a fact. There's no hiding from it. So, we'll see. Also, right, moving on. Since the last live stream, San Marino got their first win in 20 years in a competitive international for the first time against Liechtenstein, the team they beat 20 years ago in a friendly. It took them 20 years to win a game. And that Nations League group is possibly the most entertaining group. If you look at the matches and the results, I think, yeah, it's just, those teams are playing for keeps. They know they're not going to win the Euros or the World Cup, but they have pride in representing their country and playing the best they can. And they've had some very interesting results in that group. The Gibraltar-Liechtenstein game was farcical by the end. It was 1-1 with 10 minutes left, and it finished 2-2 with 2 penalties disallowed, VAR, offsides, I think, sendings off, multiple yellow cards. It really just turned into an absolute carnage of the last 10 minutes. But apparently it was one of the most entertaining games that people had seen for a very, very long time. And ultimately, what that means, the winner of that group will get promoted to the group above, which means more centralised funding from UEFA. And it means improvement in the world rankings and improvement as players, which means in the next Nations League, they'll be playing against tougher opposition, which will test them. Now they can either sink or swim. But San Marino getting that win, I think, is a massive... It was a positive feel-good story. We don't have enough of them. It was a feel-good story. And you just look at the celebrations on the pitch last week. It was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Talking of football, Sean Dyche is under a lot of pressure. There's a lot of rumours circulating that his time at Goodison will not be till the end of the season. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Sean Dyche. The performances haven't been great, and they are the second team in Premier League history to blow 2-goal leads in consecutive games. The only other team was Bournemouth. So Everton have got an unwanted record where they've lost back-to-back games where they were 2-0 up by the scoreline 3-2. If they lose a third game by a 3-2 scoreline being 2-0 up, then that'll be a record that no club has in the Premier League era. And they are in real trouble. And there's a lot of Everton fans throwing hate at Sean Dyche, but you've got to look at the board. You have to look at the ownership. You have to ask questions about where the money's been spent, what's gone wrong, and why they've decided to build this brand new stadium on the Docklands and leave Goodison. When look what Liverpool did with Anfield, investing in the local area of Liverpool rather than moving to the other side of the city. But Everton are in real trouble. There is no two ways about it, and I think Sean Dyche will not be in a job by the end of the season at Goodison. So, we'll see what happens there. But I don't know who would want to take the job, considering it's a very poisoned chalice, in my opinion. Everton's record this season has been absolutely atrocious. They are in serious trouble. Right. I'll be checking the sports news headlines shortly and see how they're all going. Oh, God. View counts have been pretty good this month as well. In fact, view counts today are pretty good. What we got? So I did the video on, UEFA threatening to ban England from Euro 2023. The view counts on that have been pretty good in the last couple of hours. In fact, already got more views than my all-time underrated footballing 11. Something that I do want to mention is in regards to my all-time footballing 11s that I've done and cricketing 11s that I've done. I like doing those videos, and of course those videos are subjective. They are just for fun, but they are subjective. I always try and do players that have retired, although I believe a couple of players on my underrated 11 are still actively playing. So, but that was a fun video to do. I just thought these were players that just came on the top of my head. I was thinking, right, let's get him down. But yeah, I enjoyed watching a lot of those players play when they were at the peak of their powers. And yeah, some of them I think are criminally underrated, either because of the teams that they played on, so their teammates, or the fact that they played at a time when their particular clubs or club that they played for got overshadowed by slightly more successful teams, or they didn't get the recognition that they wanted. They could have got at international level because of the players that were also getting selected at the time. So Wolves beating Newcastle, Arsenal beat Spurs, Lando Norris is won in Azerbaijan, No, Piastri, sorry, has won in Azerbaijan in the F1, and Lando Norris has gained points on Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen hasn't won for a couple of months in F1. I find that very interesting. McIlroy is struggling in the Irish Open in the golf. So yeah, there's a fair bit going on. It's been a bit of a quiet sports news day, to be honest. Bit quiet on the sports news, which I find interesting. So nothing really going on there of note. Right. So yeah, it's been an interesting month so far. I just find it mad that we're in the middle, dead on the middle of September. So in 2 weeks, it's the end of the month, which is mad, absolutely mad. And I just find it crazy that we're already midway through September. It's crazy. The weather's starting to change, although it's meant to be warm again next week. Now, yeah, every so often, I discuss non-sporting things on this channel. I'm debating whether to keep the other channel going, but no, this week has been a bit of a mental week. As you can tell, I'm still not 100%. Voice is still a bit croaky, still a bit under the weather. Still not 100%. Getting better though than what I was. Right, let's change who can comment now. Let's have a look. Customization. Right, cool. Customization. I love fiddling with things on this. Let's put it to hours. Yeah, let's do that. Let's save those changes. Right. So yeah, so this last week or so, it's not had the best time away from the channel. Not been well. I've had a friend seriously ill in the hospital, so it's been a bit of a crappy couple of weeks on a personal level. And the weather, obviously, we had some epic thunderstorms, and we are going to have some warm, humid weather next week. So potentially we could have some more crazy weather, which I will try and capture on camera. I like doing that. It just makes a nice break from the grind. Nice break from the grind a little bit. Because sometimes I find that I get a bit of fatigue with all the sport that we cover. I do get a bit of, mental fog, and I get a bit worn down by all the sport that we have covered on the channel. And yeah, it's one of them. But don't get me wrong, I do enjoy what we do, and of course, getting that monetization status, and we now obviously have memberships available. We now have super chats available, and you can just donate if you feel you want to. That is fun. We hit that milestone, and yeah, the channel growth is with memberships and super chats. Yeah, I would like it to be quicker. I think it's a good way to look at it. But I'm being realistic. I do expect the number of members to go up. We've already got one that's publicly said they're a member. I wouldn't be surprised if there's others who've decided to hit the membership button and be happy to become members. And the few members videos I've done are not as sport related. They're a bit more, relaxed, laid back, and a bit more, bit more human, I think. And yeah, it's very humbling, all the support that's been given, all the subscriber numbers, the support that's been given, the fact we now have memberships available and super chats available, and my moderators are brilliant. They've been brilliant for many years. I select the moderators because I see who regularly appears in the comment section and who regularly engages. But it's been also really good seeing all the new engagement from new viewers and new subscribers. And the community that we built. And this last year and a half has been ridiculous, in my opinion. The last year and a half, the growth of the channel has been absolutely fantastic. I wasn't expecting, it to get to this point. And there's been people who've taken the piss and laughed at me and tried to belittle me for doing this. And I do it as a hobby. I mean, if I make some money out of it, it just helps me out economically. It means I can pay my bills and feed myself. And that's it. Just if I could live a comfortable look, people think that every monetized YouTuber is minted, makes loads of money, and is doesn't have to do a day job. No, the majority of YouTubers who have YouTube have day jobs. It doesn't pay as well as you think. Advertising revenue now is less than what it was pre-pandemic, and actually pre-Logan and Jake Paul with Suicide Forest. It's actually less now than what it was in 2018. Advertisers are becoming a bit more cautious about their brands, and companies becoming more cautious with how they are portrayed with their PR. They're becoming very, very cautious of negative headlines and negative PR. There's been a few social media scandals that have damaged the reputation of YouTube and other platforms. I think YouTube is a lot better now than what it was in 2018 for culture and changes were necessary. But I do think with some of the changes they've hurt, they've hurt themselves. The England ban video, as I said, look, they're threatening it. It's a think of it like any regulation. So whenever you look at governments around the world and when they seek to regulate industries. So we're seeing it in the EU, for example, with lawsuits against Microsoft and Apple and Google, which is YouTube, Twitter in Brazil. Certain industries will then use lobbyists to pressure the legislatures to water down regulation or drop the legislation. But the fact there's cross-party consensus for this legislation means that's not going to happen. So in that regards, I don't think UEFA fully follow through with it because we don't know what the end product of this regulator is going to look like. We know that what is proposed on the government white paper, which is basically the draft legislation that's got to be debated in the Houses of Parliament, go to the House of Lords a maximum of 3 times with 4 amendments, and then back to the Commons to be voted on. Very rarely does a piece of legislation pass first time on first reading. It might go through multiple levels of scrutiny. What the government is proposing, which is very, very similar to what Boris Johnson's government proposed 3 or 4 so years ago, is when it comes to the final vote, it's going to look drastically different. And this is a way of the Big Six and a handful of other Premier League clubs to put pressure on the UK government, who are proposing this, to weaken the legislation. Now, the majority of clubs and most fans want this to happen. When there are those fans who go, it will hurt investment in the game and all the players will leave. Well, UEFA brought in these new spending rules that are impacting every league, and clubs are trying to cut their losses and reduce their expenditure. So I can't see how it would actually negatively impact long term. But we'll have to see what the devolved governments of Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland do, because they would also have to ratify their own version of this independent regulator for their own domestic leagues. Will the UEFA ban the home nations, starting with England, because it will only apply to the English league system, which covers a couple of Welsh clubs, as we know. The thing is, they need the English clubs in European competitions, and they need the national side to make tournaments, because it does hurt their TV revenue. It does hurt their advertising revenue. It hurts their merchandise sales, ticket sales, the whole shebang. The Premier League not being involved in Europe actually damages the whole footballing economy in Europe. So there's that. Yes, it is. It is the 4 constituent nations of the UK and the Republic of Ireland. So it's the UK and Ireland joint hosting. Yes, so it's a co-hosting thing. Most tournaments now, I think, are going to be co-hosted by nations rather than one single nation because they're expanding the Euros and the World Cup. It's going to be co-hosting all the way for tournaments from now on. I would have thought it's just too much to organise for one nation. It's too expensive. You need to spread the cost around to make it as profitable as possible. Yeah, no, fans have had enough. Fans have had enough. And yeah, we saw fan pressure stop the European Super League, pretty much. Clubs very quickly realised, oh, shit, basically, because empty stadiums on TV look really, really shit. We saw that during the COVID pandemic. Empty stadiums look abysmal for live television when you're trying to sell it to an international broadcast deal. They look crap. Not gonna lie, it looks crap. And it deters further investment from corporate sponsors, potential owners, when they're seeing that you can't draw fans to your product. It's not a good look. When you're selling out stadiums and it looks really good on live TV that seats are being filled, it looks good. It creates investment. It actually drives people on to invest in the club or sponsor a team or sponsor a league. When you've got empty seats, it's a really bad look. Tottenham's such a big six club, not. Yeah, their lack of success is troubling. I feel sorry for Ange Postecoglou. We'll see how he does this second season, but they really fell away last year. And, you know, they were signed up to the European Super League. They haven't won a league title since the 60s and haven't won a trophy of any note since 2008. Yes, they've been in a couple of cup finals, including a Champions League final, but they've gone through a lot of managers. And while they've been in the top 4 or 5 clubs in the country in regards to finishing position on the regular, they haven't taken that next step and won silverware. So I don't know. I mean, if they have a poor season this season and fall away, Man United are in trouble as well. We're seeing a power shift, and those big six clubs don't like that power shift and that change of dynamic. I couldn't get my favourite flavour, which is the strawberry Monster Zero, but the Pipeline Punch is pretty good. I just, love the flavoured monsters. England should just pull their part in hosting it. Well, the thing is, the amount of investment that the previous government and currently this government is doing by backing the whole thing in regards to backing the bid when they, announced they were bidding for the 28 Euros and the 2030 World Cup. They were bidding for both tournaments. They're going like, right, we want to get hosting rights to one of these major tournaments. And UEFA and FIFA realised that it would be in their economic benefit to do so. I think while there's a lack of trust because of British and to a certain extent German journalists, undercover journalists, uncovering all the corruption within FIFA and UEFA about a decade or so ago with Der Spiegel and The Guardian, some other high-profile publications. And there is a lot of this distrust between the governing bodies and the FA and football and fans. It's going to be interesting. I mean, I don't think we'll pull out because there's too much money that's already been invested by the British government and those clubs' stadiums, those clubs that are giving over their stadiums. There's too much money invested in the project for that to happen. It would be ruinous for all parties. But yeah, it would be very, very embarrassing for UEFA if one of their co-hosts was to go, no, we're going to boycott you. We're going to boycott, because already the Scandinavian FAs are already threatening to pull out of UEFA as well over various things. So Sweden, Norway, Denmark. And more people go, oh, they're not very successful countries. Actually, Sweden is a big player when it comes to UEFA. They've made a World Cup final. They've hosted a World Cup. IFK Gothenburg have won a European trophy with Sven as manager, ironically. And Sweden is a big player when it comes to UEFA. Same with Norway and Denmark. They are big players when it comes to UEFA. And for them to threaten to break away as well last year, UEFA's got to tread carefully. Alexander Serafin has got to tread carefully. And UEFA's got to clean its act up and be more transparent. And this is what this independent regulator is going to do for the domestic game: make it more transparent and hold club owners and the game to account, because the governance has been weak for so long, so long. Look at their fixture list now. You have League Cup matches at the same time as Champions League. Even the big clubs playing. Yeah, I mean, look, there's been a lot of debate about Aston Villa's ticketing price. Ticketing price policy for their return to the Champions League. It's been heavily criticised by fans of the club. Other fan groups are laughing at them, but this is the problem. Villa haven't been in European competition at this level for a while. They were obviously in Europe. I think they qualified for Europe last season. I think they were in one of the lower levels of Europe, but they haven't been in the Champions League for a very, very long time. And the owners need to be very, very careful, because they're going to make money out of it anyway through the TV rights. They just want to. They're milking it. And Birmingham as a city has actually got some of the lowest average incomes for the various areas of Birmingham in the country. There's a lot of deprivation in the West Midlands. It's not as wealthy an area as people think. There's a lot of deprivation, poverty, crime, and people just don't have money. And Aston Villa, like a lot of clubs, are based in areas that are not as wealthy as you think. And this is where ticketing price is becoming, and how much merchandise now costs. The replica kits now are ridiculously overpriced. And the economic landscape has changed massively, and fans, across the game, have been protesting against ticket prices and UEFA and where the money goes and governance. Look at Legia Warsaw. Like, on the regular, Legia Warsaw ultras are the best, because they have zero. They have no fear of UEFA. They are having a running battle with UEFA over their protests against UEFA, ironically. But no, the sport is at a crossroads, and I haven't even gotten to rugby league, the mess that rugby league is in at the moment. Not just at the club game, but the international game. Professional sport is hitting a crossroads, and bloody insect bites. So yeah, professional sport has now hit this crossroads where governance has been questioned, where the money is going, and the lack of accountability and the lack of transparency. It's become a major talking point, and fans, are fan groups have been protesting for a long time, but the level of mistrust between sports fans and the governing bodies is and club owners or team owners and leagues has reached a level that we just haven't seen for a very, very long time. The Carnarvon game where the Legia Warsaw fans basically rented out a caravan park to get round their UEFA ban, and they just turned up in a campsite which backed onto the stadium, was the next level shithousery. They are a very, very. I want to go to a Legia Warsaw match just because of their ultras. They are a next level on basically sticking two fingers up at UEFA. They feel that the way not just their club but a lot of clubs have been treated, and they no, they don't. Their tifosi, their tifos, their ultras are brilliant and they're colourful. And yeah, I don't agree with everything they stand for necessarily, but I agree to their right to voice their displeasure with how the governing body is governing the sport. And I've got to support my back. My back is buggered at this point. I really need my YouTube channel to make all the monies because my back is fucked. The joys of being in my mid-30s and doing a very physical job that is slowly killing me. Right, back support good lumbar support. Right, let's get that Um, so yeah, that's so much more comfortable. You have no idea having four pillows, which I've got to replace because they're falling apart. But no, yeah, Germany. Football in Germany is far more affordable than it is here to go. I mean, if I had a passport, I could fly to Dortmund or Frankfurt, get a taxi or a bus to the stadium, buy my ticket, go in the stadium, watch the game, and fly home the same day and pay less than a train into London from where I live. And I'm not joking on that. It's actually cheaper for me to go to Germany to watch a game than to go to London for the day. Yes, which means the German clubs do make less money, but it's partly because of the ownership model that a lot of German clubs have, and okay, yeah, it means German clubs are worth less money as well, because their revenues are less, but their attendances are fantastic. Regardless, you can look at the German third or fourth regional leagues, and they're selling out stadiums. Um, Now, are their attendances the best? Well, some of their stadiums are pretty big, but some of their stadiums are actually quite small. But a lot of their stadiums, which we obviously saw being used at the Euros this summer, but also at the 2006 World Cup, were upgraded for the 2006 World Cup, which made the Euros a cheaper tournament for Germany to host. They had to spend less money on infrastructure because it was already there. But Germany has other problems with the railway infrastructure and the public transport not working as efficiently as people realise. It's actually less efficient than here. Uh, will Baloo be the first sacking of the season? No, Preston have already gone through two managers this season. They're on their third. I think Dyche might be going sooner. Personally, I think Sean Dyche is more likely to lose his job than Baloo. I don't know enough about the Baloo situation. I do know that um, they have had a poor start, but Everton's start has not been as good. Everton have blown 2-0 leads in a row to lose 3-2 in both games, which has only been done by Bournemouth. And if they do it in a third consecutive game, that's a record that no one wants. And Everton are in serious trouble. Oh yeah, well the Westfalenstadion in Dortmund is an older stadium, but it's like Old Trafford. It's an older stadium that's been modified in phases. Um, so but yeah, no, the amount of rain that we had this summer across Northern Europe was ridiculous. Um, I mean, it has rained a lot. We had a lot of thunderstorms. It was very. It wasn't cold, but the amount of rain that fell. I mean, look at the flooding across Europe at the moment. Just look at the flooding right now, from Romania and Moldova through Poland, Slovakia, the Czech Republic, Austria, and southern Germany. It is ridiculous. I mean, we're having snow at lower levels of the Alps right now. The weather is not great, and it's been quite a wet summer across Central and Northern Europe. And what you have is you're having. I mean, it's been quite pleasant apart from last week where it got colder. It's actually been quite pleasant through August and September. The first half of the summer was muggy, but a lot of thunderstorms, a lot of rain, pretty miserable. Second half of the summer has actually been quite pleasant. Not overly hot. It's been decent. It's been nice. Been a few warm little mini heat waves, but it's been pleasant. But when we've had thunderstorms, I mean, Christ, we had what was it? Was it last weekend where we had a month's worth of rain in a day and a half in parts of the UK? There was flooding here, not too far from where I live, and there was flash flooding in South Wales. So we had like a month's worth of rain in like a few days. Um, um, but there were issues with the Dortmund Stadium. Do I have Facebook? Yes, but it's my personal one, just for me and my friends. I do have an Instagram, which is TheSportsBoffin on Instagram. If you want to follow there, and I've had to redo my Twitter, but I don't take Twitter or X seriously. I'm actually going to delete it again. It is a sewer of humanity. But but no, I have my Facebook, but I keep that just for personal, just my friends. You won't get anything serious out of me on Facebook. It's all memes and jokes and reels. My Instagram, I do have my Instagram, but I don't really. Again, I just spam my friends with reels and funny things I find, because I I'm tempted to get a channel specific Facebook. Tempted, where I just post stuff on there. Um, but no, I'm really tuned out of Facebook, and I rarely use Twitter. I mean, I deleted the old one. And I went without it for best part of a year and a bit, and then Paul Kent obviously got the week I got rid of my Twitter. Paul Kent got the sack pretty much. The first time last year, got all in trouble, and I'd literally just got rid of my what was Twitter, which is now X account. And I was like, what's going on here? And I was like, what? And yeah. Oh God, you were the real Sean Avery. I remember you now. I thought, who's this Colt Turner? I missed Sean Avery because you were on the hockey guy, and you kept popping up on the hockey guy, Sean Avery. I remember this now. Yes. So Cole, yeah, I remember you were being you mentioned Sean Avery. I thought I missed one of you were one of my moderators. This is ridiculous. Oh, I've got to make you a moderator now. Oh, I'm sad now. Right, there we go. I completely forgot about the Sean Avery. I cannot believe that your current job made you get rid of basically a parody account. I cannot believe that. I've had to previously disclose that I have a YouTube. And I will talk about something that actually happened with one of my work colleagues as well. He got in trouble. One of my ex-work colleagues and one of my current work colleagues got in trouble about their social media content in the last month or so, 2 months. And it's very, very interesting. So you were the Sean Avery parody account. Oh, I used to follow you on Twitter. Those were the days. I remember you popping up on the hockey guy. Oh wow. Oh wow! You were moderating for multiple YouTubers, so you wanted to keep your old accounts, but your current job said you had to delete them to get hired and use. Yeah, but you can use a real name on official emails and official socials, and then you can still have your parody accounts, your humorous accounts. I think is a little bit of overkill. As long as you declare that, obviously, what you do as another form of income, and you're open about it. And I will tell you some interesting stories about how one of my friends lost a job because of her secondary job, and one of my former work colleagues who's recently left to go to another company, and one of my current work colleagues have been reprimanded for their social media content. And I will. So let's discuss. So a friend of mine, who she will remain nameless, she was working at a law firm that I ended up working for. Now, this is going back to 2017. So this is before the channel even blew up in 2017, 2018, the first time. Now, she was working at this legal firm, which I ended up working at a few months after, about the same time she was. I think her last week, I was my first week. But she declared, because guess what? She was a cam girl. If you've heard of Suicide Girls, that's all the tattoo girls who do all the cam girl and modelling stuff. So pornography, basically. And she did declare that she was a model. She fully declared that she paid tax on this as self-employed, and she fully disclosed, her limited company. When you are self-employed, you have to set up a company in this country. So she's declared her tax details and the fact she did modelling shoots for lingerie and clothing and magazines. She was actually in the Suicide Girls magazine, by the way, and on the calendar. So she's fully declared all this. Now, all the clothes stuff and risque stuff was, declared. She also failed to mention that she did. She was a cam girl, so basically OnlyFans, but before OnlyFans was really a thing. And then one of our managers found out by basically going online and watching pornography, and then subscribed to her account. Realised that they worked together and got her the sack because it brought the company into disrepute. Let that sink in. And I even said to her, you could fight them for unfair dismissal at a tribunal. And that's when she said, yes, but I've been at the company less than 2 years. So the tribunal people say you've got to be at a company for 2 years to have that worker's right for unfair dismissal, even though she had declared her other income, which is all legal and all above board. She then went off to run a pub and then run a whorehouse. So that's another separate thing. And there were some illegalities there. Now, my current work colleague has been reprimanded for some of his political views on social media. And unfortunately, he leans a bit more to the right. And I don't agree with all his political views. He's a funny guy. He comes up with some funny stuff. But when it comes to my country's immigration policy and some other domestic policies, he's, a little bit of a MAGA kind of character. He's not the most intelligent. But a lot of people felt that was overreach by the company, but because we're employed by the local government, the local council, it gets complicated. But there are concerns, that this is infringing on freedom of speech. However, he did post some stuff that was borderline. You can get arrested for it, and I'm not joking. Inflammatory content. Another one of my now former colleagues who left to go to another job, who I got on really, really well. He openly criticised the local council for some of their policy changes that involved our contract, and he got a big bollocking in the office. But he was going to leave anyway. He handed his notice in shortly after that because he found a better paying job doing the same role for a rival company. In the fully commercial sector, we deal with residential waste collection, and he went and left a couple of weeks ago, actually. So in that regard, I've always been open and fully disclosed that I do this, and I've been fully open about it. And I've never had any issues with that by being open and fully disclosing what I do. But I think that's another reason why I don't swear as much on video. In fact, when I do a normal video on the main bit of the channel, when I'm doing like a match review or a club history or a news piece, like the Paul Kent situation or the Latrell Mitchell or the NHL potentially having a lockout or things like that, I now make the language basically PG, very, very, what you would normally see a newscaster when they're reading the news, for example, or when someone's giving an interview, on an interview podcast. One of the bog standard, pretty PG, pretty family friendly. Live streams, obviously, I get a bit more fruitful, and obviously on the members' videos, I will probably be a bit more relaxed and a little bit less politically correct or PG. I might be a little bit more F-bomb here, F-bomb there, and be a bit more relaxed because you've got to pay to watch my membership content, and I don't think people will be willing to pay to then grass. I just cannot see a member of the local council, for example, who may know me, or maybe a subscriber going, I'm going to pay to then get this guy fired from his other job, because what you're going to achieve out of that apart from you're paying me money. So but yeah, so I've always been open about having this YouTube channel and the other YouTube channel. One of the lads who works on one of the other contracts with the council subscribes to both channels. And it was ironic how he actually found both channels, because his kids were doing a school project in regards to the history of the area in their history class. And I was coming back after my shift back to the office, and he was finishing his shift, and he was in his part of the depot. He goes, "Oh, can I borrow you for a sec?" I said, "Of course you can, mate." He goes, you're the YouTube guy. And I was like, which channel? He went, both of them. And I was like, fuck. Simply because his kid was doing a school project and stumbled across one of my videos on the other channel, the history channel. Just was like, shit. Um, um, but yeah, the nurse in OnlyFans got fired because of her co-workers kept watching the videos at work and getting distracted by it. Yeah, there's been a few. There's been was it a school governess, a school governor who was found out, and there's been a few of them. If I'm being brutally honest, if they, there's been a couple of teachers who got sacked. There's been a couple of people who work in insurance companies and banks and customer-facing roles. I've got nothing because not everyone on OnlyFans is a sex worker, by the way. I think it's about one in five creators on OnlyFans either are sports creators, musicians, actors and actresses, those who are trying to promote books and product authors. So it is sort of like YouTube and Twitch. I think it's about 68% of OnlyFans creators work in the sex industry. So it's not truly like Pornhub or anything like that. But yeah, no, I do feel sorry for those who have obviously lost their other forms of income. I think it is wrong that they are stigmatized in such a way. But, it's the society we live in. I mean, I do, yeah, I think they could, argue that if it was in their contracts that if they were doing another job that was in contrary to what their organisation and what that organisation stands for, and they're in breach of contract, some companies say you cannot have a secondary income. Some employers will say you cannot have a second job if you are in breach of contract, and that could be potentially a way round some of them going on your bike. Here's your P45. Here's your pink. Is it a pink? I don't know what it is in America when you get sacked. Is it a pink slip or something? Here's your redundancy forms. You're gone when they let you go. There are some companies that do state you cannot have a secondary income, and they're very clear in your contracts. And some people just do not read their employment contracts. I think it is a pink slip. I think there isn't pink slip change of ownership of a car. I seem to think it is a pink slip is a change of ownership for car ownership details in the US, very similar to a VO5 here. But no, that you basically get here. It's called a P45 when you lose your job. I think it is a pink slip or a green slip or something. It's basically collect your unpaid wages. Bye bye. Here's the rest of your wages, or here's your redundancy pay. Off you go. Some employers will do that. No, I think it could be a pink slip or pink clip, something like that. I'll have to go on Urban Dictionary because that'll probably have the slang. But no, I find it interesting though that you had to give up your other social media account, your Sean Avery account, but I think that's a little unfair. But I wouldn't be surprised if they did actually have something in your work contract that did state something, and they obviously wanted you to work for them because hey, you've got the job with them, and obviously you relocated to an overseas US territory, which is Puerto Rico, and so they obviously wanted you badly in the company. But yeah, all tongue-in-cheek stuff aside and all that, I know it is. I think certain employers do need to be careful, but there are some companies that will. I mean, so there's a nuclear test facility and a nuclear military facility not that far from where I live, where they already know about your bank history. If you criminal record background check, they know what you spend your money on before you even get to the interview phase. It's what is it called? It's part of the UK's nuclear civil and military program, and it's based just a bit further west from where I live. And when you apply for the job, they do their screening. They already know what you spend your money on. They already know what you do on social media. They know what websites you go on. And when you get to the interview, they already know if you watch porn, for example, if you have a Netflix account, if you've had any bad debts, if you've got a county court judgment, which is basically debt restructuring, if you've had an insurance claim on your car, if you gamble, so if you're a member of an online casino or you go to a casino, how often you go to the pub, your credit history, everything. And that's where a lot of people slip up, is in the interview stage, because they say you've got to declare everything, and people will try and hide the fact that they might gamble online, or they might, have a parody social media account like yours, for example, or my YouTube, and they'll be like, yeah, you're not getting the job. And it's as simple as that. I forget what. No, I forget what the name of the deal. It's basically a part of the Ministry of Defence, and it's a big sites where they manufacture all the nuclear warheads, and they also dispose of the nuclear waste. When the nuclear subs and the nuclear reactors for power plants, they're changing their nuclear rods over, and it's a big site. And when the trucks come through, they basically get police and military convoys as well, and we regularly see them. I regularly see them on the main road through where I live. They go past my work. Oh wow! You're a semi-film critic and writer. Was at Fantasia, met Chris Duckman and David Cronenberg, friends with other critics who know many directors and actors and people at Warner Brothers, including one who. Oh, you mean Mike Hamill on the cartoon? It's Mark Hamill. It's Luke Skywalker, who does the Joker on the cartoons. Trying to get screenplays greenlit. Producers are friends with indie production company making a film with him. Oh, fair. So that's pretty cool. That's a cool gig to have. I have to admit, that is a pretty cool gig to have. Oh, Tim Schafer. I have heard of Tim Schafer. I know Mark Hamill did the voice of the Joker on the Batman cartoon series, on the various iterations of the Batman cartoon for 25 years. And a lot of people didn't realise that Mark Hamill was the Joker on the cartoon series, or various versions of the Batman cartoons and animes. A lot of people didn't realise Luke Skywalker was the Joker. I think 2026 Olympic ice hockey favourites. Well, it's 2 years out. A lot can happen between now and 2026 in February. A lot can happen. Do not be surprised if one of the Scandinavia, like Sweden or Finland, do really, really well. I think the US, if they select the right players, I think have a good chance. But the Canadians, they will have their best players available. All being said, all players being fit, they can have a stacked roster. But in saying that, having a stacked roster doesn't always work out when it comes to international sport. You can have the best players and they don't gel as a team. You need to build a positive team culture and environment. So it's all well and good saying you've got Conor McDavid, for example, in the Canadian team, and building the team around him with some of the other, top Canadian players. Same in the US with Hellebuck as the goaltender, for example, and a stacked team there. Same with the Swedes and the Finns with some of their top quality talent that plays in the NHL. But just because you've got all this talent doesn't necessarily mean it's going to pan out at the tournament. We've seen that before with the Canadians and the US at the Olympics, failing to medal when the NHL players have been allowed to go. So it also depends if the Russians are allowed to participate at this point. You've got the neutral athletes who, under that banner, they will be participating as. But a lot can happen between now and 2026. A lot can happen in a year and a half. Players can get injured, players can get suspended. Players can retire. A lot can happen. A lot can happen. But it's also down to the team managers and the GMs going, this is what I think is the best balanced roster with the best chemistry where the players work well together. Because as I say, I could liken it to Brazil in international football. They have always had stacked teams, haven't won the World Cup since 2002. It's like the All Blacks in rugby union right now. They, won back-to-back World Cups, but between 87 and 2011, couldn't win the World Cup. And now South Africa are more successful in the Rugby World Cup than New Zealand. When it comes to Rugby League internationals, last year New Zealand put on a record-breaking victory over Australia in Rugby League, which is let that sink in. So not the video game team, Shafar. One you don't know. If Russia don't attend the Olympics, then does France qualify with how they placed or what? Again, it'd be the neutral athletes, but they would have to go through a qualification process, and if they're the new, it'd be complicated. Brazilian football's at an all-time low. They're struggling to qualify for a World Cup. Brazil is not the force they were, but you look at the success they had for many, many years. And then between 1970 and 1994, they didn't win a World Cup. And the last time they won the World Cup was 22 years ago. So it'd be 24 years at the next World Cup since they last won it. So they've only won the World Cup twice since 1970. It's been 30 years since 94, and it's been 22 years since 2002. So there is either the rest of the world has caught up, or Brazil have really nosedived. And I think it's a bit of both. I think players now are overcoached. The flair is coached out of players, and Brazil play their best when they're playing the samba unstructured football, where they just play for the joy of the game. But I do think players are being overcoached, and they're being overcoached in attack as well. Too many teams are too rigid in their attacking style, where you've got to fit a system. But with Brazil, I mean, the skill, the technical ability of even an average Brazilian player is fantastic. And people will go back to that 2014 team that got battered 7-1 in the semi-final and go, that's the worst Brazil team ever. It's not, actually. That was a pretty solid Brazil side that, if they were playing back in the 60s and 70s and into the 80s, would have, been lauded as a very talented side. But they didn't. Well, too many individuals and too many egos with the Brazil setup. Well, you think England might finally win an international trophy in 2026? I mean, it's possible. It's possible. Of course, it's possible. But I mean, we'll have to see what happens with Lee Carsley, if he remains interim or if he's given the job full time. He's had a good start with 2 wins where they kept the opposition scoreless, and they're not the toughest opposition in the world. But you can see that there's a change in the philosophy and the change in direction of the team and how they're going to play. And we'll see, when it comes to the qualifiers, who he selects and how the team plays, and if he is going to be given the gig full time. You're just joining us after dinner and watched Wakefield versus York on YouTube. Can you please explain how promotion relegation works in Super League? It's not, because IMG are basically London Broncos are going to be chucked out of the Super League even if they finish above Hull. So the relegation from the Super League is completely different to the promotion. And you look at the problems that rugby league is facing with clubs. Basically, there's 4 or 5 clubs in the championship that are buggered financially in the short term, not just the long term, but the short term. And I do fear for the future of the London Broncos, my club, and a lot of other clubs. Some of the other clubs in Super League basically having to overextend themselves financially. When you've got clubs like St Helens and Wigan who are losing money, and they're never going to get relegated, even if they were to finish bottom this season, they weren't going to get relegated on the IMG grading. Because what the problem is they're basing this grading system on the past rather than what the potential of the future is. We know these clubs are established. It's about getting those other clubs to get better. So, yeah. Promotion relegation is long. It's going to be a mess long term. It's going to harm clubs and the structure of the game long term. You need to have a stable club in London to grow the footprint in the south of the UK. You need to have a stable club in the Midlands, and you need a stable club in the West Country. Now, Cornwall is the West Country's equivalent of an expansion team. But the way the RFL and the RMG thing is going, it's not going well. It's a simple answer, and the way that the grading system is being implemented is not not what the clubs voted for. Not all clubs voted for it, by the way. So you can get promotion through playoffs, and then next season you get relegated if you want. Pretty much, that's how the grading system's working. So if York, for example, were to do it via the final series, or Sheffield, or another club, and Wakefield fluff it, but Wakefield can still get promoted under the IMG grading. It's flawed. It's a flawed system. It's a flawed system. It's I've ranted and raved about the IMG grading system and how the RFL is governing the game and the mess they made of Magic Round and the fact that it's now a summer sport when it should be a winter sport because it would work better in parallel with the Challenge Cup. It would also therefore boost attendances at the final, making it the last game of the season rather than midway through the season. Yes. No, London has 2 teams, the Scholars and the Broncos, but the Scholars are now an amateur club. But yes, 2 professional clubs in rugby league, yes, in this country. If you were to go to Australia, it's a different story, but in Europe, yes. Hull is an interesting city. It can support 2 rugby league teams, but one team, KR, are doing really well, and Hull FC aren't yet. A few years ago, the roles were reversed, where Hull KR were struggling and Hull FC were the ones, competing. I do find it interesting that Hull can support 2 teams, considering it's not a very wealthy city. It used to be. Hull, actually, ironically, before World War I was a very wealthy city, and even before World War II was a very wealthy city in regards to other cities in the UK. Of course, the economic downturn, but they are well supported. You're either a KR fan or an FC fan, and you could just draw a line in the middle of the city. You could have one brother or one friend being a FC fan and one friend being a KR fan. It's same with like Liverpool and Everton in Liverpool with football, or Bristol Rovers and Bristol City. Back in the day, you could draw a dividing line down the city. Now, in some households, well, Bristol's case with Rovers and City, it's a bit different, but I think on the whole side of things, you can still draw that line down the middle of the city in regard, but there's a bit of blurring of the lines because, people get married and they have kids, and one partner might be a FC fan and one might be a KR fan, and the kids will support one or the other. Same with Liverpool with Everton because it's a friendly rivalry. But when it comes to cities like Bristol or Manchester, and of course London, when it comes to multi-team cities, it's a little bit more dicey. it's a bit more of a dicey one because a different district or a neighbourhood will support one club over another. And you look even in North American sports, we have a two-team or multi-team city like New York or Los Angeles, for example, or Chicago when it comes to baseball. So one neighbourhood will be one team, and the next neighbourhood will be another team, and there will be rivalries with that. Yeah, it's same with Sheffield. It's same with Glasgow, where it's with the various clubs in Glasgow because that's a multi-club city when it comes to football. Same with Edinburgh as well. It's a multi-club city when it comes to football. Dundee, multi-club city when it comes to football. So yeah, some cities are are multi-club, and you can draw a dividing line, or a district will support one club over, and another district will support another. And there's a fierce rivalry. But then other cities, it's a more of a friendly rivalry where if you have a family, the husband and one of the kids may support one club, and the wife and another one of the kids may support another club, and the other kid may support a different club entirely. But that's not always the case. More often than not, the neighbourhood you grow up in is the club you support. And there can also be a political and a gang social element to that can get quite violent. Yeah, Bristol is a rugby union city, yes. But the rivalry between City and Rovers is ridiculous. I've got books on it, on the football rivalries and the hooligan gangs and all that. And it is a bit nasty, the Bristol rivalry. It's a very, very, very nasty rivalry. And it's not always a pleasant one. Although Bristol City have been, for the most part, more successful than Bristol Rovers, and have the bigger stadium at Ashton Gate, and potentially I think have a bigger fan base. Whether you can debate that. There is hatred there, and it's been a long time. I think it's been '96 was the last time they played in the same league, so it's been a long time since they were actually regularly facing each other. But the Gasheads, they hate the Robins. It's nasty. It is nasty. Very, very nasty. Yeah, I mean, look, if the right ownership comes along, or they just get the right players in and circumstances, potentially, yes, Rovers could be playing in the same league as City sooner rather than later. Sometimes it could be you find a couple of diamonds in the rough, have a good season, get that promotion, and then we're having a different conversation about things. But their stadium needs a fair bit of work. Yeah, I think you could argue Ashton Gate. I mean, Bristol City have stable ownership and a lot of investment, and Rovers have been in the non-league since the last league meeting. So, it's the same with Sheffield United and Sheffield Wednesday. I mean, Sheffield United in more recent years have been Premier League side and higher up, and Sheffield Wednesday haven't been in the Premier League now for the same length of time. And the roles have been reversed in Sheffield, although Sheffield Wednesday, the older club, more successful, although Sheffield United have had, I think, lately have been more of when it comes to league finishing position and how they're doing, and it's an interesting one. No, Wednesday, I think, have the bigger fan base, and they are the more historically successful and spent more seasons in the top flight because they were a founder of the Football League, whereas Sheffield United were a founder of the Football Alliance. So yeah, let that sink in. They were found because the reason why the Football Alliance existed for the brief time it existed was the Football League had rules that you can only have one club, professional club, in the Football League from a town or a city, which is why Liverpool didn't exist until after the Football Alliance clubs were absorbed into the Football League. That's why Everton are the older club. Sheffield Wednesday is the older club. Manchester United, ironically, formerly Newton Heath, is the older club over Manchester City. That's Notts County is older than Nottingham Forest for that reason. because the Football League said you're only allowed one club per town or city allowed in our league. And that's why the Football Alliance was set up by rival clubs to rival the Football League, because they realised we need revenue. The Football League has now got this league structure that's organised, and their rules don't permit two clubs from the same, town or city. And that's why the Football Alliance is formed. It's also another reason why the Football Alliance folded, because the older clubs, ironically, the more established clubs, played in the Football League, and the younger clubs that were starting out on this journey couldn't sustain themselves, which is why clubs like Blackburn Olympic didn't even make the Football League. They couldn't survive financially, and yeah, there you go. Would you say the Football League used to? Well, yeah, you had to reapply for your membership every year, and that existed until I think it was 87. I think it was in the late. It was before I was born, but it was in the late 80s where they brought in promotion and relegation between the non-league and the Football League. Basically, at the end of every season, the club that finished bottom in the Football League standings and all the divisions started off as one division, then became two, then three, and then four levels. They had to reapply for their membership. And the top finishing club in the non-league, which is what is now the National League, which is formerly the Conference, had to also put in an application to get accepted. And a club like Torquay, I think, has the record for the most times they survived being voted out of the Football League. I think. I can't remember. I've done so many history videos now, it's ridiculous. Altrincham Town have been rejected on application, I think, 4 times from entering the Football League. If I remember correctly. I've got to do a video on Altrincham Town, actually. That'd be quite interesting. And eventually it was decided that promotion and relegation between the Football League and the non-league would become a thing, rather than clubs voting on a club staying in or voting on replacing a club with another club from the non-league. And there were several instances of clubs that got kicked out of the Football League because they didn't meet the criteria. And then a club was voted in to replace them. So that changed around 40 years ago, I think, just under 40 years ago. They brought, I think it was 87. I think it was 87. They brought in promotion relegation between the non-league and the Football League. What sometimes Stoke versus Port Vale? I think back in the day it was, but Stoke as an area, and I forget the location where Port Vale actually their home ground is. It's a weird city, if that makes sense, because of how it's basically an amalgamation of towns in Staffordshire that have been bodged sort of together. But they are rivals. They just happen to be in 2 different leagues, and they haven't met as regularly as I think they would have liked. But I can definitely do a rivalry. I did the rivalry comparison between Blackburn and Burnley before the season started. I can always look at derbies like Bristol Rovers, Bristol City in the head-to-head, Sheffield United, Sheffield Wednesday, Liverpool, Everton, Man United, Man City, and rivalries like that. I think I wouldn't say Port Vale's got a tiny fan base. I think, ironically, looking at the videos I've done on the channel, the big 6 clubs don't actually draw. Ironically, when it comes to viewers, which I find weird. I think other clubs feel they're not valued by the mainstream sports media. They feel there's a bias against them, bias in favour of your Man Uniteds, your Liverpools, your Man Cities, your Arsenals, your Chelseas, your Tottenhams, potentially Newcastle now with their takeover. Although Newcastle's got a very loyal, very fanatical fan base in the northeast. And other clubs just feel like they're not being represented fairly in the media. There's a media bias and a clickbaity kind of, crap. It's yeah. Yeah, and I find that other club videos when I'm doing match reviews of the FA Cup or club histories or a manager's getting sacked or a club's got promoted or relegated, whatever it may be, do quite well, ironically, when it comes to viewers. You look at the football club history videos and the viewership on non-Big Six clubs, although some of these clubs are quite big in their own right, it's actually quite high compared to the Big Six. Well, what do you mean the culture change where Liverpool Scousers going to Liverpool games one week, everything yet? The ability of travel and affordable travel, so trains. And when both clubs suddenly become successful at the same time and become rivals for trophies, because Everton were quite a successful club, pretty regular until the 90s, from formation all the way through to the 90s. Look at the history video I did on Everton. They win trophies regularly, and then 95 and it stops. I think it's a friendly. It's not a true friendly rivalry because there is some. It's the derby match with the most sendings off ever. Not just in England, but I think in footballing history. I think it's got the worst disciplinary record. There is a certain amount of aggro between both fan bases, and I think it is a heated derby when it comes to the players. When you walk out, there's no mercy given by the players of both sides. They will kick lumps out of each other. Would you say Tranmere has a natural right? Yeah, the rest of Merseyside. It just so happens that Tranmere play at that lower level below, Liverpool and Everton. You could argue Chester, Crewe would be a rival for them. Stockport would be a rival. But Tranmere, I think, I would say Chester and Crewe would be bigger rivals than Wrexham for geographical location. And because Wrexham have been outside the Football League for so long, and Tranmere only were briefly outside the Football League, they're more likely to play Crewe than Chester or Wrexham. Although Wrexham, are I think in the same league as Tranmere, so there is that. We want to get further up the league pyramid and get promotion. Aston Villa versus Everton is the most played game in English football. Where you look at the amount of FA Cup finals and European finals and games played in the top flight, Aston Villa and Everton, I think, are the two sides with the most top flight seasons in their history. So there's a reason why they would have played the most games against each other. And it's no joke. The amount of cup competitions they've met in, and the fact that Everton have the most top flight seasons, I think Villa have the second most top flight seasons, tell you all you need to know about that head-to-head, because they're both founders of the Football League. They're both founders of the Football League, so when it was the initial 12 until the Football League expanded with the Football Alliance, the FA Cup was where these clubs were very likely to meet. And then I think, they have the most seasons in the top flight, those two clubs between them. Everton the most, I think Villa the second most. I think Liverpool are third most seasons in the top flight. So it makes logical sense they would have met each other more regularly as a head-to-head home and away. And then you include the cup competitions in there. It's going to happen. In the city of Liverpool, they don't generally hate each other as they have. It's true. You will have Tranmere fans in Merseyside who are relatives with Everton and Liverpool fans. It's one of those areas where the rivalry is less intense because it's a bit more friendly. There is still that intensity and hatred. There will be certain areas. Bear in mind how close the stadiums are. And the reason why Liverpool exists is because Everton had a dispute over trying to get tenants for Anfield because they were building Goodison. And they wanted to rent out the stadium and they couldn't find tenant. And then Liverpool came along and bought the stadium off them for not a lot of money. You don't see Wrexham playing against Chester for a while. There could be an FA Cup tie in there. Let's not just put it this way. I do not think Liverpool fans are City, whatever. Well, you say that, but then I think Tranmere fans wouldn't mind playing Everton more regularly because that will boost their own finances, and that would be an interesting rivalry that could form and still create a bit of tension, because I think Tranmere actually has a sizable fan base and gets overlooked because of Everton and Liverpool. That could be a tasty little rivalry, but Everton, it's because of the ownership's doing. The boards have made some really poor decisions over the last 20, 30 years, and they haven't invested in Goodison, and they've decided to, for the last 20 or so years, they've been trying to get this stadium built. Um, so that in itself is interesting. Yeah, the Wirral is an interesting area, and Birkenhead is a sizable population centre, and ironically, it's the safest area in Merseyside. It's the wealthiest area in Merseyside as well. It's a very interesting part of the world. A lot of wealthy business owners in Liverpool actually live in the Wirral, and a lot of people commute from Birkenhead and the Wirral into Liverpool for work. It's the middle class area. It's the nice bit. Ironically, it's the nice bit. It is an interesting area, and the history there is interesting as well. Again, that's a video for the other channel. But yeah, no, it is an interesting part of the world, and it's its own. Southport was the club I was thinking of for Tranmere, not Stockport. Southport. Southport was the club I was thinking of. A friend of mine used to play for Southport, actually. I think Tranmere and Wrexham would like to have Chester back in the Football League. They've got Southport back in the Football League. That helps. And Southport are back in the Football League, which I think does help. But yeah, Chester, I think that would also help with the local footballing economy. The police may not like it, but the clubs would. Yeah, Southport are back in the Football League, as are Stockport. I think Southport are. I know Southport are doing quite well considering where they used to be. I'd have to have a look at. I think Southport. Again, I don't follow club football as religiously as I used to, and that's me being honest. I don't enjoy watching football as much as I used to. It's just facts. It's just facts. I don't enjoy. I just don't. Okay, so they're National League North. I think it would be good to see Southport and Chester back in the Football League, but then another two Football League clubs would have to get relegated out. I'm going to have to do a video on Southport. I think that'd be a kind of a fun video to do, because they have been a Football League club. Same with Carnarvon Town. There's a few, and the aftermath of that at the beginning of August was not what we needed, and it, and the area I live, there was minor disorder in the area I live in, the part of the country I live in, a couple of the nearby towns and cities. There was some minor disorder, nothing on the levels of some of the more nasty disorder that we saw, but I still think things are simmering. I think another major incident like that, and we could have another flashpoint. I think the trust between a lot of the people in the government is at an all-time low, and the trust between the public and the police is at an all-time low. And it just takes another incident whereby there's either police brutality or another government policy or another incident will spark something, and it's simmering. And the government will say, "Oh, the tough sentencing deterrence." I still think there is a simmering, and something's another flashpoint's going to happen. the conversation too many in football keeps appearing. My views on this. Bigger squads in the argument, but then you do not as have your best team. Well, back in the day, I mean, when I was a kid, you had the youth squad and the reserve squad, and yeah, player wages were less, but the game was still profitable. You would have first team squad, your reserve team squad, and the under 21s, and the under 21s could be promoted to the reserve team and the first team depending on injuries and suspensions and transfers, and illness. And so you already had the reserves were already fully match ready. The under 21s could step up to the senior squad and then establish themselves. And you had and the reserves would play on the midweek and be match ready for the weekend. And you could dip into the reserves for the FA Cup and the League Cup, and you having a bigger squad meant you could rotate and you could cope with the fixture congestion. And then UEFA came in and brought in squad limits, and they brought in overseas player limits, and buggered it all, absolutely buggered it all. And now players are getting paid too much because they got. So there's that. Things are simmering, but the police are there with their facial recognition cameras on, so people have to be really able to do anything. I've not been to well, you say that, but there's been a lot of protests in France with some of their social problems that they have, and there's anti-government protests, and there's a simmering. And they have flare-ups quite regularly. I think it's simmering again. I think it's a matter of time before another flashpoint happens, be it government legislation, a peaceful protest turning nasty, which has the potential, and a flashpoint, be it another Southport. There's going to be a flashpoint of something. I've not been to a game for years, can't justify the price, and I do not see it changing or even see a League Two side. It's not good value for money in my opinion. I'm with you on that one. I think while some clubs have reasonable ticket prices, it's the transportation costs, it's the food and drink, it's potentially accommodation. You might have to make a weekend of it. And it's when the Rugby League World Cup was on, for example. I was going to go to the semi-final between England and Samoa, but there was one problem. It was on a Sunday, and the weather wasn't great, and I couldn't get the Monday off work. So I was like, well, the game itself is not expensive. The tickets aren't expensive. It's the transport, getting in and out of London, and getting back safely in accommodation. And that was the reason why I didn't go. It was going to be a very, very long day, and I wasn't particularly well at the time. The weather wasn't great, but it was a fantastic game. One of the best games of rugby league for just the not because it was the best game technically. It was just the momentum swings and the passion that both sides played the game with. Fantastic game. Watching it on the laptop. But I was going to go to that. I was planning to go to that game 2 years ago, and then it was the transportation costs, and I would have had a very difficult time getting there and getting back. If it was on the Saturday, I would have gone. It was on the Sunday, and traveling across by train on a Sunday is difficult at the best of times, and I would have had to leave so early in the morning to get there, and then I would have had to get there, get my seat, watch the game, then get back on public transport straight away, get home. It was not, and people go, people say, oh, you only live X amount of miles outside London. Yeah, but transport costs are ruinously expensive. They're prohibitive. They're so expensive. I mean, I live, in the Thames Valley. I mean, I do my shopping in Guildford, which by train is I think 5 or 6 stops on the train from where I live. It's still nearly £15 to get the train from where I live, go to Guildford and back again for 6 stops. £15. It is very expensive to get the train. But when I go every few months, I on a Saturday I will go on the train, go to Guildford, and treat myself. I'll save up and treat myself to a pair of Air Maxes or some, trackies like this, stuff for work. But it is expensive. It's not cheap. And I always, when I go there, I will have lunch or breakfast, depending on what time of day I'm going. I'll either go to Greg's or I'll go to Mackie D's. And I'll get myself a bite to eat when I do my shopping. Get myself a bite to eat. Always. And it's the same when I go to Maidenhead to see my mates at Maidenhead, from where I live on the edge of Wokingham. I will always, when I go see my mates, still get a bite to eat in a takeaway place, like a McDonald's or a local takeaway place, always. And the transport costs are very prohibitive, very prohibitive. And that's what's stopping me. And also with the amount of strikes we've had on the trains over the last couple of years, and the engineering works as well. It's not been a good time when you're reliant on public transportation. Are these clubs relying on the locals? Do not consider travelling? In what regard are we talking about locals? I mean, a lot. Right, so rugby league in this country is very gate driven. It's heavily reliant on fans and attendance because the TV deal is not worth a lot of money. Rugby union is finding that now they've ring fenced the Premiership, although I think it's Doncaster want to get into the Premiership and they are spending money. Clubs are going bust, which is basically what rugby league's trying to do. They're trying to copy rugby union. Rugby union's on a good state. Now, rugby union is also heavily reliant on fans and attendance, and some clubs have had a drop in attendance. Fans and attendance. The lower leagues are also heavily reliant on gate receipts, fans and attendance. Same with ice hockey in this country, heavily reliant on gate receipts and merchandise sales, like match day merchandise sales, because the media deals that are in place are not worth a lot of money. The media coverage is not fantastic. If you are lucky enough to be a hometown fan, so let's say Reading or Maidenhead United as my local clubs, my own Maidenhead United are in the non-league and Reading are in the football league, but Swindon, Oxford United. A lot of the fans are local. I know a lot of my friends are Reading fans. A lot of my work colleagues are Reading fans, and they do go to a lot of games. And I've been to a lot of Reading games over the years. But for me to get to a Reading game, I would have to get the train to Green Park, which is the new station, which is right by the stadium, if I was to go to a game. But a lot of my work colleagues do go to Reading games when they can. And they live. The problem with where Reading Stadium is, it's in an industrial estate, whereas Grimsby Stadium is in a housing estate. Same with Anfield, same with Goodison. I think Prenton Park at Tranmere is surrounded by old terraces. Some stadiums are really convenient for locals, others not so. So Ellen Road for Leeds, for example, isn't in the most convenient place, as proven by Magic Weekend with the rugby league. But St James's Park, for example, is right in the city centre. So, and Newcastle actually does have a very good local transport network with the metro and buses. Whereas Leeds, if you're a Leeds United fan, unless you're living close to the Beeston area, you've got to go from one side of the city to the other. Whereas with Liverpool and Everton, a lot of the fans do live in the local area, but a lot of the other fans, they'll just walk through the city. They'll just walk through the city to get to the grounds. Old Trafford is lucky because it's right by a train station. Same with the Emirates with Arsenal. White Hart Lane is not too far from transport links. QPR Loftus Road is not too badly sited. Crystal Palace and Charlton aren't badly sited. Some of the London stadiums actually are very well sited for transportation links. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have complained about where certain stadiums are located and ease of access and, transportation links, because a lot of new stadiums are built on the outskirts of towns and cities. But the King Power Stadium is built by the old Filbert Street. It's right next door. They kept it as local to the area as possible that it already was in with Leicester. And some stadiums are really well located for ease of access for transport. Other stadiums, again, not so much. They've had to add the transport links after the event. Although Manchester, the Etihad was built for the Commonwealth Games for 2002, so that was deliberately sited where it was for a reason, and they built the transport network around it, and they redeveloped the whole district of Manchester around it. Yeah, AFC Wimbledon beating MK Dons gave me a smile, and there weren't that many travelling fans either. Do I think Sale Sharks and the Red and Salford get poor attendance because of the stadium issue? The stadium is an issue. That's a well-known issue, and it does hinder both clubs. And when you're in a gate-driven league where attendance is part of the revenue stream, fans and attendance is crucial to clubs' finances, and when a lot of clubs are losing money or struggling to break even, attendance is key. It doesn't matter how successful the clubs are, they are struggling to get fans through the gate. And yes, you could argue that the fact that Manchester has two very, very big football clubs and a reasonably successful ice hockey team that's in the top level of British ice hockey, and then you have a rugby union and a rugby league club in a very small catchment, in a very congested catchment area. And Greater Manchester is more football than any other sport. There are a couple of rugby league clubs like Oldham as well. That does impact, fans and attendance. And when you've got Manchester's an interesting city and Greater Manchester's an interesting urban area. Yeah, when you're in a very competitive sports market, that's a problem as well. No one likes MK Dons, if we're being honest. There is no love lost. Warrington does not have a high-level football club. Look, Warrington is a rugby league town. Same with St Helens, for example. They're rugby league towns. And that's why they get good attendances. And that's why they're successful. It is a nice stadium, but it's not in a residential area. There's a few stadiums you could say that are really modern and nice, and they're slap bang on the edge of an industrial estate or slap bang right on the edge of a city. And it's a pain in the arse to get to if you don't drive. Like me, I don't drive. It is a pain in the arse to get places. But I can easily get to Reading by the train. So if I wanted to watch a football match at Reading, I can do it. Problem is Reading isn't in the same league as Blackburn, so I would just be watching as a neutral on game day. And with the way Reading is run at the moment and the frustration that a lot of fans have, and I agree with their frustration with how Reading's been owned and run over many, many years, this Reading is an example of why we need this independent regulator. Because regulating themselves with the Football League and the FA and the Premier League and the National League and all the various non-leagues below the National League has not worked. And it has been proven by the Reading situation as an example. There are other clubs that are also struggling right now, but Reading is the example I would use. Well, the new Everton, the Bramall Dock development. I mean, look, I've got nothing against Everton deciding, look, we need to do something with our stadium infrastructure. It would have been nice if they had stayed at Goodison and done what Liverpool had done with Anfield and built in place. It will be the third stadium Everton have had. Anfield, Goodison, and now the Bramall Dock. It's looking nice. Is it the best new build? No. But at the same time, this was a decision the club made. They had obviously, because they had not decided to develop Goodison in the same way Liverpool had done with Anfield, they had therefore limited themselves with that site, and ownership decided to go down this route. Now, whether it pays off for Everton or it sinks them, we'll see. They could be playing in that stadium in the Championship next season with how things are going currently at the moment with the squad they have and how they're playing. Swindon Town Stadium is about as central to Swindon as you can get. Same with the Link Centre with the ice rink is where Swindon Wildcats play. It's pretty good if you're an ice hockey fan, you live local, or a football fan, you live local. Your sports teams are well located within the urban area for fans. The land of the Magic Roundabout, yes. Will Man United move from Old Trafford? I mean, they put proposals in for a new stadium, potentially, but the Glazers, as the majority owners, have allowed Old Trafford to get in the state it's in over many, many years with poor maintenance and not upgrading it, not maintaining it very well for a long time. Fans have been complaining for the best part of a decade and a half about the state of the stadium. And to John Radcliffe, I mean, look, Man United are losing money. And if they want to do this stadium, that's going to make the club not meet its financial obligations under the new financial fair play rules. And they will be docked points. It's a fact. They're going to be docked points anyway with these consecutive seasons of losses. If the Premier League is going to be consistent with how they've been with Everton and Nottingham Forest, admittedly, Leicester got a lesser punishment, but if they're going to be consistent with fining and docking points of clubs, Man United should be punished. Chelsea have tried to find a loophole by selling to 2 hotels to get around a loophole, so they stay within the profit loss threshold because the regulation is so badly enforced. Which is the most run-down Premier League stadium? I think a lot of people will actually say Old Trafford. Potentially Portman Road at Ipswich, because that hasn't been upgraded in a while, but it is an all-seater. You could argue Goodison because that's obviously being replaced. It's a hard one. You know, there's also plans for Chelsea to move out of Stamford Bridge, and I'm not sure how the fans would feel about that. There's a lot of issues with that ownership as well. Old Trafford has been neglected. I mean, Newcastle have plans to upgrade St James's Park, or proposals. Keyword proposals. You could argue, no, I wouldn't say Villa Park is the most run down because they've done upgrades to Villa Park in my lifetime. That's an interesting one. That's actually a really interesting one. That's difficult because a lot of the clubs have either upgraded their stadiums in phases or built brand new ones. So the Dell's gone, it's now St Mary's. Filbert Street gone, is now the King Power. Man City moved out of Main Road to the City of Manchester Stadium, which is now the Etihad. Arsenal moved to the Emirates from Highbury. Tottenham basically rotated White Hart Lane 90 degrees and just renamed it the Tottenham Stadium without actually getting any naming rights. Chelsea, Stamford Bridge is actually quite a nice stadium. Fulham have done upgrades to Craven Cottage. Brentford have built a new ground. Palace have got plans to upgrade Selhurst Park, and they're in the process of doing that. Wow, that's actually a really good one. I think it actually would be Old Trafford. Chelsea have got proposals for a new stadium and leaving Stamford Bridge because there's not a lot they can do with Stamford Bridge. But I don't know where they'll put a new stadium, to be brutally honest. But the issue is to do with stadium ownership and lease holdings and the constricted aspect of the site. How would Chelsea? But I don't know how they would upgrade Stamford Bridge. I think they're restricted by the surrounding buildings to the site, and the fan base, the supporters club owns the stadium, and they lease it to Chelsea. So there's a few issues No, I think 40k actually is big enough because there's some big clubs in Europe that have smaller stadiums and more intimate stadiums. It's not always about the size of the stadium. It's about how you respect the fan base and maintain the facilities. You don't need a massive, soulless, cavernous stadium. Loftus Road proves that with QPR. Yeah, but pre Abramovich, they didn't have a big fan base apart from in West London and some of the home counties. Uh, I call them fair weather fans, much like Man City and Manchester United, the glory hunter fans. And some of them stick around and become rusted on, and a lot of them drift away. You know, but the Premier League stadiums that are a bit run down, I would say Portman Road needs a bit of love. But Old Trafford for the lack of investment in just maintaining it. At least Portman Road, the roof doesn't leak, whereas Old Trafford is an absolute disgrace. And top clubs have to have international fans to make the numbers up. I mean, look, the TV deal obviously alters the economics, but in reality, the clubs are still heavily reliant on fans in attendance. Fans going through the turnstiles, the domestic fan base, which is why they got so badly hurt during the COVID shutdowns. And the TV companies were like, "We didn't pay for this," but no, fans in attendance is key. And I've always said about any professional sport, empty seats is really, really shitty for live TV broadcasts when you're trying to appeal to the international audience and say everything's all healthy and all good. When you've got empty seats all over the place, it is a bad look. So yeah, some of the merchandise is well overpriced. Well overpriced. I'm not a fan of some of the kit designs. I think they've lost some of the traditional colours. Yeah, but Arsenal have, Spurs, or we've got them over Spurs. The fact that I miss the traditional club colours on kits. And some of the away kits and third alternate kits are absolutely vile neon colours. They're absolutely just not attractive colour scheming. But no, some of these Premier League clubs I just outdo each other with the stadium. It's like, well, you want to outdo on the field and win on the field. That's what you need to do, is win on the field. And this is what rugby league is going through, is like, size of your social media following. Win on the fucking field and fans will turn up. Win on the field and compete on the field and try on the field, and that will get fans through the turnstiles, not your social media following. Spurs are an enigma, and it speaks to the culture within the club. And every manager that's come in since 2008, or even before 2008, has managers in post leaving Spurs, when they get interviewed, they basically sum up the football club. And is it Joe Lewis and Daniel Levy? I mean, one is a convicted fraudster in the United States for insider trading, and the other one is Daniel Levy. So, yeah, they've only won a handful. They've only won 2 trophies in my lifetime. Everton, another club, that big club, lack of silverware. Aston Villa, another club that has struggled to win silverware, all in my lifetime. It speaks volumes of where they're at. I think Everton have had a couple of trophies in my lifetime. Villa and Everton, their last trophies were in 1995. Spurs, 2008. So it's been a long time since these clubs were successful. This season is the 30th season since Everton lifted any silverware. And that tells you all you need to know with what's happening at Everton. They've had one cup final since then, under David Moyes. That's how long ago Everton were competitive. Rugby league needs to upgrade its stadiums if they can afford it. Well, not every club actually owns their own stadium. London Broncos are leasing their Plough Lane from AFC Wimbledon when they play. Widnes, their stadium is owned by the local council. Bradford, I mean, don't talk about Odsal and the disaster their stadium situation is. Castleford, their stadium's falling down. This is the problem with a lot of the clubs is stadium infrastructure. It's not good enough. Who has the biggest and most impressive rugby league stadium in the UK and the world? For the UK, I think Wigan, Huddersfield, St Helens, and Warrington could all compete, and Leeds with Headingley could all compete in that regard, because they've all got nice modern stadiums. But in the world, you would have to say Brisbane with Suncorp, or the Cowboys with the Queensland Country Bank, or Parramatta with what was Bankwest, which is now CommBank. I would say it's Brisbane. Sydney with the football stadium. That's pretty nice. Not gonna lie. But I think it's the Broncos have Suncorp, which is the biggest club stadium, which is club specific, where they are the tenants. But I do like what they've done with the Sydney Football Ground, which is it a core stadium? No, it's Allianz. It's the sponsor, but it's the Sydney Football Ground. That refurb looks nice. Not gonna lie, that's a nice facility. Gold Coast with the Seabus Super, which is Robina. It's a nice stadium. It's a mini Suncorp. I do like the Queensland Country Bank Stadium, the Cowboys' home ground. Fantastic. Beautiful facility in the shape of a Q as well. It's in the shape of a Q for Queensland. You got Mount Smart with the Warriors. That's nice. They've done some upgrades to that stadium. It's a big stadium, quite nice. But I would say Suncorp. Yeah, I do think that the rugby league stadiums in this country aren't great, and they do need improvement, massive improvement. I think that's fair. I think that's a fair assessment. And if we're talking about rugby league specific stadiums, that would take Huddersfield and Wigan out because they're also football grounds. So that leaves St Helens, Warrington, and Leeds with the good stadiums. I know Wakefield are improving their stadium. Castleford. Widnes's ground is not bad. It's just owned by the council. That's the problem. Lee Sports Village. I mean, that's a decent facility, but it's smaller. I'm trying to have a think. But no, I mean, look, some of the stadiums are quite good facilities, but a lot of them need upgrading. There is no doubt on that. There is no doubt on the facilities needing upgrades. But it's the same in the Football League. A lot of clubs need to upgrade their facilities. A lot of them have in recent years, and I think, the replacement for Knowlesy Road. I think it's a nice facility. Is it the best? I think Hull FC with the KC is a pretty good facility. Hull KR's ground is looking a bit rickety, but you could argue Hull, obviously with the KC Stadium. That's quite a good modern facility. It works well for both football and rugby league. I can't believe I forgot that one. That's quite good. And Plough Lane actually works well with rugby league as well with the London Broncos. I think they, AFC Wimbledon have done them a solid by making, allowing them to lease for match days. I think that's a decent facility as well, if I'm being honest. It is more difficult for London clubs to win the league. Is it more difficult? Oh, is it more difficult? Well, Chelsea and Arsenal have proven London clubs can win the league in my lifetime. In saying that, all the London clubs have really, really good fan bases, solid fan bases. And I think all of them, apart from Palace and Fulham in the professional game, have won silverware, apart from maybe Barnet. All the big ones like Charlton, Millwall haven't won any silverware, but Charlton won silverware. Chelsea, Arsenal, Spurs, they've all won silverware. QPR have won silverware. I think it's fun. I think the London derbies are fun. The cross, you'll have your main London rival, and then you have the other London rivalries. They are fun. They are fun. I mean, Leyton Orient versus Charlton Athletic is still a heated rivalry as much as West Ham, Millwall. They don't like each other. The Metropolitan Police don't like policing matches in London, but they always sell out. It doesn't matter if you've got Leyton Orient playing Brentford in the FA Cup or the League Cup. That is going to sell out. That is going to be a rivalry. It would be the same as QPR playing Charlton. They're going to sell that game out. It may be a less intense rivalry than QPR playing Brentford, or QPR playing Fulham, or Fulham playing Chelsea, or Brentford playing Chelsea. But it's a rivalry, and it's an established rivalry because it's in the capital and it's West versus South. It'd be like Leyton Orient playing Charlton because they're in the same league. They are rivalries. It's like East London versus South London, or South East London versus North East London. It is. There is hatred there, and Charlton don't like Millwall. They don't like Millwall, but I also don't like West Ham either. And Charlton is more successful than Millwall, but less successful than West Ham. So there's that part of the east side of London, and the south east and north east London gets heated there. If the right ownership comes along and the clubs are well run, then yes, potentially we could have a lot of the top flight clubs being from London. Is potentially yes. In fact, you could have the whole top flight from London in theory, because there's enough clubs in London of professional status, and that is no joke. That it could potentially happen. Hypothetically, yes, but in reality, no, because there's some really good clubs in the northwest, the northeast, the Midlands, even the southwest. They've got some pretty decent clubs. The south coast, it could happen, but it won't happen because there's enough clubs around the rest of England that are a decent enough level to be top flight or in the second tier that it won't happen. But London could have its own league on its own. We've said that before. But you've got to remember the London metro area and then the surrounding area. London itself is just shy of 10 million, and then the surrounding towns and cities in the southeast and the home counties, which constitutes the greater metro, if we go by US metro standards, that's about 25 million people. That's a lot of people. That's like a third of the UK live within 2 hours of central London by train or something, 2.5 hours by train. It's ridiculous, and that includes a lot of other towns and cities that have professional football and professional rugby clubs and professional rugby league clubs, professional ice hockey teams, and other live within Hyde Park Corner, 2.5 hours, bang. And that is no joke. And there's a lot of cities and towns of big population sizes that fall under that. I don't know. Is it bad? Is it not bad? I don't know. It just shows that London has become more competitive as a sports location, because there was a period where not all. It was more the northwest and the Midlands had the majority of the clubs. So it just shows that over time, yes, But that also comes down to ownership and realising you can make a lot of money in London with a sports team and owning a sports team. But it hasn't always been the case. Chelsea have struggled over the years. Arsenal and Tottenham have struggled over the years where they've not been successful, although Tottenham, ironically, has been more consistent than Arsenal at times. Does not maybe in Brazil and Argentina. I think Sao Paulo, Rio, and Buenos Aires might, and even Montevideo in Uruguay might have something to say about that because they've got a lot of professional clubs in their capitals. No, rugby union has a lot of clubs that were traditionally based in London and still does have where their home clubhouse is in London. But it does make it difficult for sports like rugby league and ice hockey that are also professional to establish a presence when the professional sports scene is dominated by football. Yes, and rugby union is realising it has to move out of London to compete for fans. Because football has become so dominant in the country, that's why rugby league is struggling, rugby union is struggling, ice hockey. Because football has won the battle of professional sports, it makes it harder for other sports to establish a fan base and a toehold. Or if sports fans are fans of multiple sports, they've got to cherry pick. Do I go to my football club, my rugby league club, my rugby union club, my ice hockey club? Where do I go and spend my money as a fan in attendance or buying merchandise or watching on the TV or whatever it may be? Fans have to cherry pick, and the economy isn't doing well right now. And the average person has less money in their pocket than what we did 5 years ago in real terms because of the pandemic, the shutdown, price rises, energy prices, all that has had that impact. Look, I mean, you look at the fact that two former London-based clubs have gone bust in Wasps and London Irish on the professional side. That is a problem. And then you look at those clubs that are below the Premiership that are also semi-pro and professional, like London Scottish, London Japanese. For example, London Welsh have gone out of business. Yeah, Harlequins and, obviously, and Saracens. Although Saracens, I wouldn't say are in London anymore. I think it's just Harlequins now. Tells you all you need to know about the situation. And I think football is part of the problem, but also the cost. Running a sports team in London is expensive. Paying your players, you would have to pay your players more to attract them when they can go somewhere else where they can get paid less, but the cost of living is less. And so that's why your clubs like your Exeters, your Northamptons, Leicesters, Gloucester have always been, Bristol have always been, Bath. Obviously, Worcester have gone out of business, but they were attracting players because it's cheaper to live. And Worcester is not a small city; it's a reasonable sized city. It's just the cost of living is less. Running a sports team in London, you're paying more in your bills. You're paying your players more to attract them to live in a more expensive area. Your council tax will be higher. You've got the congestion charge and the ULEZ charge, so it's going to cost money. For players to go to training, go to work. That has to be factored in. The cost of living, it costs more to heat your house, pay your mortgage. It doesn't matter if you're in the lower levels of football, it costs money. And so, some of the more successful, wealthier clubs in London, like your Arsenals, Chelseas and Tottenhams, can afford to throw the cash around. But your Leyton Orients, your QPRs, your Charltons, your Millwalls, they are a bit more constrained with what they can spend. They are still wealthy clubs, mind. They are still wealthy clubs, mind, because they're in London. But at the same time, if let's say Millwall was based in the West Midlands, like a Walsall's wage bill is probably less than Millwall's or Charlton's or QPR's or Barnet's, because it's cheaper in the West Midlands for cost of living and energy bills and insurance and mortgages and things than it is for London. Big golf and fan. No, I still think the other London clubs have big fan bases. I think you are underestimating how London is Palace has a huge fanatical fan base. Charlton has a fanatical fan base. Millwall has a very fanatical fan base. Leyton Orient has a sizable fan base. QPR, Brentford, Fulham, they all have really sizable fan bases that are not only in London but also in the surrounding home counties in the southeast. It's facts. I've got QPR merchandise here. I've got a beanie. So while size of stadium is one thing, these clubs in London are big fan bases, and I think they're underestimated and undervalued by the mainstream media. The rivalries when they play each other back that up. Very rarely you see empty seats at the London games. And if Charlton were to make it back as a Premier League side, for example, or QPR, potentially Millwall make a top flight push. That Leighton Orient, if they go up the divisions, if Barnet can get back in the Football League, honestly, Barnet, I think, obviously does have the smallest fan base because Barnet really is right on the outskirts of Greater London. But all the other ones are well within Greater London. And yeah, they've got very established fan bases, very big fan bases, very passionate fan bases. And, Charlton, ex-Premier League club. QPR, ex-Premier League club. They have sizable fan bases. I love Loftus Road. It's my favourite stadium. You are right. You are right on top of everything. That's why I love Loftus. Loftus Road is my favourite stadium. It's still, you can see a fair number of people. It's just a lot smaller than a lot of other Premier League stadiums, but it's my favourite because it is so intimate, because you're so close to the players and the benches. The front 2 or 3 rows at Loftus Road, you're actually below. Your eye line is pitch level. Your actual seats are actually below pitch level. Same with Watford. You're actually right there at ground level. It's fantastic. And you never see empty seats at Loftus. It's not the best stadium in the world, no, but it's my favourite of stadiums that I've been to. I really enjoy the atmosphere there. It's an intense atmosphere there. They've hosted Rugby League internationals there with the old Great Britain Tri-Nations playing against New Zealand and Australia. And they sold it out. It's a fantastic little stadium, really intense atmosphere. And, it works well. It obviously does need a lot of upgrades, I'm going to lie. And QPR, they have to think about potentially upgrading the stadium in the future. But my God, it's a fantastic atmosphere. I wouldn't swap Loftus Road for any other stadium. It's my favourite. Did Wasps play there one season? They might have done. They might have. I know they've hosted Rugby League internationals there. And I would have to look at Wasps and their former home stadiums before they moved to Coventry. I would have to look into that. That's something, to look into. But Loftus Road is a fantastic. I can do that now, quickly. I'll do it now quickly, actually. Right, let's have a look. And then I've got to wind the stream down and get a bite to eat because I am a bit peckish and I am hungry. Let me just have a look at Loftus Road. Now, why was the reason Wasps played there for one season? Loftus Road. Loftus Road is normally the MA Trade or the Matrade Stadium or Matrade. Let's have a look what it says about the tenants and who's played at Loftus Road over the years. Is a football stadium in Shepherd's Bush, London, which is home of QPR. Wow. Okay, so the current capacity is 18,439, although the highest capacity the club has had before all-seater stadiums was 35,353. Since the all-seater era was just over 19,000, so 19,002 against Man City in 1999. It was built in 1904. Yes, Wasps played there for a long time, actually. So Shepherd's Bush FC played there between 1904 and 1915. QPR have had 3 separate spells at Loftus Road, 1917 to 1931, 1933 to 62, and 63 until now. London Wasps played there between 1996 and 2002. Fulham had to play there for 2 years between 2002 and 2004 whilst Craven Cottage was upgraded. I remember going to many Fulham games at that point and a lot of QPR games as well, but Fulham had to ground share with them for 2 years while their stadium was upgraded. AFC Wimbledon, the current AFC Wimbledon, played there for a season while Plough Lane was being built between 2020 and 2021. So Loftus Road has been used by a lot of teams, but Wasps played there for a long time, for 6 years. Not 1, 6. In 81, it was the first stadium in the whole of Britain to have an artificial pitch between 81 and 88. And yeah, Wasps shared the ground between 96 and 2002 before they moved, obviously, to Coventry. And Fulham shared it for 2 years while Craven Cottage was closed for recon. And AFC Wimbledon spent a season there while the new Plough Lane was being completed. Barry McGuigan defeated Eusebio Pedrosa for the World Boxing Association Featherweight Championship in 85. Wow. That is mad. So yeah, Wasps actually spent a lot longer than 1 season there. They spent many seasons there, which I find very, very interesting. No, I think the old Plough Lane was actually bigger than the current Bournemouth Stadium, the Vitality. I think the old Plough Lane was bigger than... what's Blackpool Stadium called? I actually think the old Plough Lane was actually bigger than some of the Premier League stadiums we've seen in the all-seater era. People turning up. I think it had the lowest attendance in Premier League history. I know that happened. I think that the average was about 7,000. But I'd have to look at that. I think they had the lowest attendance in Football League history as well, on an average for a season, which was below 1,000 at one point. They did really struggle for attendance towards the end before MK Dons became a thing. They were really... Fans were protesting by staying away. Back in the 70s and 80s and in the early 90s, it wasn't a great time. The stadium was in the right state. No, that is true. But we're having the debate about ticket prices now, and are they too much? And a lot of discussion about pricing and is it affordable and is it justifiable, and that's another thing. May I just make reference to you guys that obviously channel memberships are now available. So if you do want to become channel members, that I'll be most grateful, and therefore, that will help the channel. And also, super chats now available for live streams as well. So I've just thought I'll give you guys the heads up, as we've only done a couple of live streams since super chats have become available and super thanks. But channel memberships are now available, and I've made it single tier. For your information, it is all single tier. We already have a member. I would like to see more of you guys as members. I mean, you're all moderators for a reason. I think you're all fantastic in that regard. As when we do live streams, you do donate your time to moderate the chat as you do, and you've done a fantastic job doing that. I know I've made it a little bit stricter for comments. For you have to be a subscriber to comment on live streams. I may drop that for a while and see how it goes with the whole, people trolling and being obnoxious in the comment section. But I thought I'd let you guys know that super chats are now available. So if you want to donate any money to the channel, that'd be fantastic. You don't have to, but it's there as an option, which other YouTubers do. And of course, memberships are now available. And I would love for you guys to consider becoming channel members. There'll be regular videos done on the members section, and that also helps the channel. And at some point soon, merchandise, I'll be sorting that out at some point. Most likely in the new year. I've got to have discussions with a couple of friends who can help me out in that regard. Design a few things, get some designs. But I talked to a couple of friends about designing a logo and getting the merchandise up and running, and just get a couple of hats and hoodies. Basically, it's what I'll be doing. More likely than not, and we'll have a bit of fun with that. But there was that. Right. The British government were considering the option of moving AFC Wimbledon to Dublin. And that was considered by the British government. And then because that was being considered, the FA went, well, actually, we've just been allowed, English clubs have just been allowed back into European competition. And that would be seen as government meddling in the league, and UEFA will take a dim view. And also, this was at the height of the peace process and at the end of the Troubles, and the FAI were like, no, because that will devalue our own domestic league that is currently struggling, which it was at the time. The Irish domestic league was struggling at the time, and it was seen as that would potentially inflame tensions between the communities, and the peace process was underway. And it was declassified last year, I believe, and the idea didn't go down well. You have to feel you've done well keeping going. Yeah, I know, and a lot of YouTubers I follow gave up one time. Yeah, I mean, look, I heard. Yeah, I know a lot of still got their active channels, but haven't posted in a long time. There's a few that I follow. I'm like, why? I look and go, hey, hang on a sec, they have stopped posting. You have to feel sorry for the new generation of football fans from Milton Keynes. It's not their fault, but it's a club with an awful history. They could at least drop the name. They could call it Milton Keynes City or something, or something else. I think the branding's terrible. But again, they do it with the ice hockey team, calling them the Lightning, the MK Lightning. It's Stadium MK. The Milton Keynes general, branding's pretty crap. They didn't win hearts and minds either. I mean, the idea was considered at cabinet level by the government. But there has been that idea. I mean, if you remember last year, on my day job, I came across last summer. I came across a load of old football programs and football magazines from the 60s, and the talk about a British Super League or a European Super League was around in the mid 60s. Started around 62 and reached a crescendo around 66 to 68 when the World Cup took place here. And so the idea of a European or a British Super League is not new. The idea of Rangers and Celtic joining the English league system is not new. It's been around for 60 years, nearly 70 years. And, fans were against it then. And the authorities were against it then. So the idea of a Super League, be it a domestic British one or a European one, is reared its ugly head many times. Many times. And I did a video on it, and the idea of a European Super League is not new. I actually read the article that's in this old magazine, and they're discussing it, going, this is not a new thing. And people don't realise that this was being discussed back in the 60s. It does rear its ugly head every 5 to 10 years. Really, because I think Aberdeen fans and fans of Hibs and Hearts would have something to say about that. And it would kill Scottish football. You would have to get the other Scottish clubs involved in a British league system. And then it comes down to the domestic FAs working together, which they've proven they can't at all. There's too much politics involved. But no, Hibs and Hearts are pretty solidly supported. And Aberdeen, Motherwell, St Johnstone, the other Glasgow clubs like Partick and Clyde. You would have to, Hamilton, Falkirk, Stirling, you would have to get these clubs to agree to allow the two most successful clubs in Scotland to leave their league system and destroy their own league ecosystem and their own economy. And but Celtic and Rangers, they would actually struggle in the British league system. They or an English league system, they wouldn't win titles, not in the modern day. If they were part of England, they wouldn't, and that would kill them as well. It would kill Scottish football, and it would do damage to them. It would do damage to. I mean, Celtic. I can't see Celtic fans being happy playing in England, considering that sectarian element, and it would be a security nightmare. The unrest at games would be a nightmare. The policing would be a nightmare. It would be almost impossible to police. And it would definitely kill the game in Scotland. The game in Scotland's in a bad state, but it would definitely kill it. You would have to get all the Scottish clubs to merge into the English league system, and then you would have to merge the Welsh league system into it as well. I don't think you could do it with Northern Ireland for political reasons. But the security nightmare, the disorder at games, I mean, that would be, madness. It would be madness. I think you could argue it has been devalued somewhat, but you would have to also argue that no one's willing to invest in Rangers or Hearts, Hibs, even Celtic. You haven't got those billionaire owners from overseas buying into them. So there's that. Historically, Ireland had traditionally one league, which is why you've got the Irish League and the League of Ireland. They basically have the same name. Edinburgh is an interesting one. It's a very interesting one in regards to investment in the clubs and Hibs and Hearts. I mean, Edinburgh is a mini London or a mini Manchester. It's a very expensive city to live in, and there's a lot of government facilities, both national and local government facility, offices and staff based in Edinburgh. But there is just that lack of investment in the three professional clubs. Even though Hibs and Hearts are very, very successful in their own right, Edinburgh City have gone bust and reformed. And there are some massively deprived areas in Edinburgh, but it's a very expensive city to live in. One of my best friends is a Hibs fan, so and I do have a lot of banter in that regard. Rugby is strong in Edinburgh. Yes, the National Stadium is there when it comes to rugby union. You've got the professional rugby club that plays in the Pro League or the United Rugby Championship. So that is, rugby union is strong in the Lowlands anyway in Scotland, and has a strong amateur and semi-pro kind of following. And it's an interesting one. But Aberdeen has started 5 from 5. Hey, look, that's a good start. And if they can keep it up and finish in the top 2 or 3, I think that's good for Scottish football. If they can get winning one of the cups, I think that's good for Scottish football. It's been a while for Aberdeen. It's been a long time since they've had success. Murrayfield popular with fans. You always see Murrayfield sold out when they play test matches there. They've upgraded the pitch from the old muddy mud bath to the more modern playing surface. It's been a while since Murrayfield's had some stadium upgrades where they've increased the capacity, but it's fans turn up. But is it probably the fans? I think Twickenham has got the better transport links than Murrayfield. In saying that, Edinburgh is a smaller city than London, so it's easier to get around. But London has a better transport network in general. But Murrayfield is a good stadium. It's in a good location. It's not miles away from the city centre. Bloody moth gnat thing. So it's well located, and plus you've got the ice rink there as well, where the Murrayfield Racers play and the former Edinburgh Capitals and the ice hockey used to play. So there's a professional ice hockey rink, which is one of the oldest ice hockey arenas in the country, in the UK, in the car park of the rugby stadiums. There's 2 professional sports venues in the Murrayfield Sports Complex. Hampden's got a train station right by it. You've got Hampden Park train station on the Glasgow Central line, the Circle line in Glasgow. Hampden Park has got good transport links. Queen's Park play there, and it's right there. You've got a train station for the stadium. Stadium in Scotland that's not popular. Tynecastle? Ibrox and Parkhead are pretty popular. Is it Tynecastle? It's one of the Edinburgh. It's got to be one of the Edinburgh clubs. Has to be. Because all the Glaswegian clubs have got good transport links. Because Hibs are based in Leith, and it's got to be one of the Edinburgh clubs. Has to be. But I couldn't tell you, honestly. I couldn't tell you. But I don't know enough about the Scottish stadiums and where they're located in the where they're located. But Edinburgh's an interesting city when it comes to their rivalry, and you look at it and you look at things, and Dundee having 2 professional clubs separated by a road is madness. But I do think that where stadiums are positioned in Scottish towns and cities are positioned pretty well, if we're being honest, and pretty well located. But when it comes to multi cities having more than one team, I mean Dundee is a mad one. Dundee, although I think, a similar size to Bristol, so. Glasgow having, got the old firm, then you've got Partick and Clyde, and Queen's Park. We've got 5 professional clubs in Glasgow. Edinburgh has 3. It's an interesting one. But no, Dundee having, Dundee and Dundee United literally separated by a road is ridiculous. They share the same firm of football hooligans, by the way, because it's ridiculous. But it would be fun to go to Dundee and do a fan meetup, because that would be brilliant. If I could do a subscriber meetup anyway, I would love to go to Dundee just to have the banter with the football fans. I would like to go to Perth to see St Johnstone fans as well. I've got a lot of St Johnstone fans who are subscribers to the channel. Same with St Mirren, ironically. In fact, I've got a lot of Scottish football fans who are actually subscribers to the channel. Rangers, Celtic, St Johnstone, Aberdeen, both Dundee clubs, Inverness, Cally Thistle, the Edinburgh clubs, and I found that there's no sectarianism, even though it does actually obviously happen at games with sections of each fan base. From the Scottish subscribers when it comes to football, or just subscribers to the channel from Scotland, and there's a fair few. Not as many as I would like, but they call out the sectarianism, which is refreshing, considering that is a major issue at football in Scotland. So that's interesting. Yeah, Glasgow has volunteered, and there's a meeting I think taking place this week in regards to the 2026 Commonwealths and whether Glasgow are going to host again. And yeah, that looks very likely that they are going to be the host city again for the second time in just over a decade. That'll be interesting. But they've got facilities already there from the previous time they hosted, I think back in 2010. So it will be a cost-effective Commonwealth Games in that regard. Is it a friendly rivalry? For the most part, yes. I think there's a little bit of tension there at some times if both clubs are fighting for league position in the same league, but it's a reasonably friendly rivalry. There's a bit of niggle to it occasionally, but they share the same hooligan firm. Let that sink in. But yeah, you will have divided families in Dundee. One brother may support Dundee, the other may support Dundee United. So, but I would argue it's a reasonably friendly rivalry. But there's a bit of tension there. Scots are very good football supporters. Their attendances are actually very high in comparison to their population, which is quite low. Yeah, I mean, even the smaller stadiums and the smaller clubs sell out their stadiums. But their stadiums are generally smaller, so to speak, except, certain clubs have bigger stadiums. But there is that. They are passionate football fans. It would be nice to see a club not called Celtic or Rangers win the league. I think that would benefit Scottish football massively. But St Johnstone doing the Cup double a couple of years back, I think, was a shot in the arm that Scottish football needed at that time. Does Ibrox need an upgrade? I think if the Euros, which the whole of the UK and Ireland are co-hosting, I think it would be nice to see some stadium upgrades in Scotland and some investment in stadium infrastructure. But Rangers do have their money problems still. Even though the club is technically reformed and it's not the same club as the original club because of the restructuring of the club for ownership reasons, Rangers still have their money problems. Celtic aren't awash with cash either. That's the thing. But it would be nice to see some stadium upgrades, yes. Technically, no, but yes, they are. But technically, no, and it's to do with the ownership and the re-registering of the club for official reasons for the SFA and to participate in the Scottish Professional League structure. Several Scottish clubs have had to reform and gone bust and reformed as Phoenix clubs. It is, but it isn't. It's one of them. But yeah. Anyway, thank you for your time. UEFA Conference Cup could be a good opportunity to win a trophy in Europe. Well, yeah, we'll have to see how the Scottish clubs do in Europe and also how they do domestically as well. But yeah, no, for future reference, just remember that super chats are available in live stream and memberships are now available. And I would like to see you guys as members. I really would, because then it would justify me doing a members only live stream. If enough of you guys were to sign up as channel members, it would justify having a channel membership stream rather than just a full public one. That would be kind of cool. But yeah, I'm going to call that a stream. I really appreciate all the questions again. But yeah, no, just remember that, yeah, super chats are now available, so you can give donations that way, and channel memberships are now available. And I would like to see as many of you as possible as channel members. That'd be kind of cool. But for me for now, thank you very much for watching. Really appreciate it. I'm going to get a bite to eat, and then I'm going to get an early night because I've got to be up early for work in the morning. But yeah, really appreciate the questions. And we discussed some interesting stuff. Obviously, there's some big major sports topics that are discussion worthy right now, that are important, and we'll see what happens with UEFA's threat about the banning of England participating at the Euros, all the home nations that participate in the Euros, if this legislation goes through with the independent regulator and also clubs as well. We'll see what happens with Josh Adokar with the cocaine positive tests at the roadside, and what happens with the Bulldogs there. We didn't discuss that enough. And the drugs culture within professional sport, not just rugby league. That's worth keeping an eye on. And a few other bits and pieces as well. We'll see what happens with who the next football manager is going to be losing their job, because Preston have already gone on their third manager this season. And it'll be interesting to see what happens with Sean Dyche and the IMG grading and rugby league and the end of season internationals, with England, Samoa, and the Pacific Championship that the NRL were organising, which I'm really looking forward to, by the way. I'm looking forward to these end of season rugby league internationals. Really looking forward to them. I'm looking forward to the England Samoa tests. I really am. Rugby league videos do really well on the channel. They really do well on the channel. Good viewership with rugby league fans. I've got a good connection with rugby league fans. But anyway, for me for now, thank you very much for watching. Really appreciate it. And yeah, for future reference, on live streams, super chats are available and memberships are available. So just bear that in mind. I would love to see you guys as members. I'd be really appreciative if you became members. And remember that, that little cash icon, that little dollar symbol, super chats and donations that way are available as well. And they go and help the channel. They honestly help the channel, even if you only give like £1 or $1.99 or whatever, as a channel donation. I mean, it helps. It really does. But for me, for now, thank you very much. Really appreciate it, and I'll have some more content for you guys on the channel in the next week coming soon. So keep your eyes peeled. But for me, for now, it's goodbye from me, and I do hope to see you guys as members as well, because there'll be some more membership content coming from behind the scenes, where we go through all my notebooks and we look at some of the my other stuff that I do, not only for this channel but the other channel as well. But for me for now, it's bye.